Nestled into the deep valley beneath the legendary peaks of the Mont Blanc Massif, Chamonix can claim to be one of the world's true climbing meccas. The town itself is home to roughly 10,000 people, although there can be 10 times that many in the Chamonix Valley on a busy summer's day. Although home to some wonderful cafes, bars and restaurants, Chamonix is best known for its mountains and the extraordinary access to them that the extensive lift network provides. There are almost limitless possibilities for exploring the mountains here on foot, ski or in the air. But for one weekend per year, the local population come down from the peaks, grab a seat in the Place Mont Blanc and watch the world's best climbers aiming to win in one of the IFSC's most famous and iconic of venues. Yes, and what a morning we have here in the Place du Mont Blanc. The square is filling up nicely, Mont Blanc is looking resplendent, and I'm delighted to say I've got climbing journalist Matt Groom alongside me. And Matt, it's not only the square that looks good, we've just been up on the stage, routes look pretty good too, and quite contrasting for the men and the women.
Yeah, very, very different style. The women's route, fairly straightforward in terms of how to do it. Obviously holding on is going to be the key problem with that one, but fairly simple in terms of the moves. Pumpy at the top. Apparently the crux going off the 3 volumes into the big sloper, and that's going to be the tricky move, especially when pumped, is to try to pull through into that left hold. And then the men's...
complicated route.
Yeah, viciously tricky, I'd say. The start of it is where we're going to see, I think we're going to see a few early falls. Complicated sequence. It kind of comes from underclings. You have to swap your hands a lot. There's a volume out left, sort of a big side pull, and of course those cheetah holds with the dual texture. Very, very slippery.
Yeah, and also Matt mentioned it low down. There's quite a few moves. We actually had to get the route setter to explain it twice. You can see it down there on the right by the Chamonix sign, and then up through those lower cheetah volumes and onto the first red holds, and then you've got that huge series of volumes that form a kind of a ret. That's where it gets quite complicated. You can see on the left, this is a women's route. We mentioned it, quite simple, but hanging on the big challenge, and Matt called it earlier about the move up to the 2 blue volumes being one of the cruxes, and the men's route on the right there, pretty tricky to read. The moves perhaps not especially difficult, but it'll be a case of figuring them out and figuring them out quickly. So we've got about 4 minutes until the start of the semi-final here in front of an increasingly full Place du Mont Blanc. Before we bring you that, let's have a look at yesterday's qualifiers. Of huge glaciers and mountains, qualifiers took place in the iconic Place Mont Blanc in Chamonix town centre, with a large crowd watching despite the fierce sun. Fortunately, the wall stays in the shade virtually all day, so conditions for the athletes were pretty good, and plenty of climbers took full advantage. In their first home World Cup of the season, Team France had an up and down day with 5 women but just 2 men through to semis. Of those 2 men, one was local resident Romain Desgrange, who looked in top shape and cruised through, and the other was young up-and-comer Sam Avazou, who qualified 8th. Romain has never won a World Cup in his hometown, and expectations are high for him in the semis. Teams Japan, Austria and Slovenia all had good days, with most of their big guns through, although Max Rudiger and Magda Rock did miss out. There were no such worries, predictably enough, for Janja Garnbret, who topped both routes with minimal fuss. Jane Kim had, as she usually seems to, an excellent day too, with 2 tops seeing her through in joint first with Janja, Akio Noguchi and Anneke Verhoeven. Janja's compatriots Mia Krampel, Vita Lucan, Mina Markovic and Chiasa Callan also went through. Manon Elie, fresh from 4th last time out in Villars, is also into semis. Jorg Verhoeven couldn't quite make it through, narrowly missing out in 32nd. The semi-finals promise to be spectacular with a nice combination of young, exciting climbers such as Ashima Shirashi, Claire Burfind and Luca Potokar, and legends like Petra Klingler and Alex Megos. Alex, perfect day for you.
I'd say so, huh? Sun is shining, got the sunglasses on, top 2 routes, it's going good.
And in Vila, you narrowly missed the final. How are you enjoying lead season overall so far, 3 days in?
3 days in. I quite like it, to be honest, yeah. It's cool to meet all the people again. I mean, I know quite a lot of them from back in the youth and from climbing outdoors and, you know, rocks. But it's kind of nice to meet everybody once in a while and just hang around, have a chat and have a climb together.
And have you been training much for competitions, or are you just translating your outdoor fitness?
Well, I did train the week before Villars. Does that count? I guess so.
It's not a huge volume of training, if I was being critical.
That is true, but I did train before it.
Petra, your second ever lead World Cup, how have you found it?
I mean, it's really weird considering I have done World Championships in lead, but actually last week did my first World Cup ever. It's fun, I mean, the routes are great, but the bouldering part is missing, so it's weird because every hold you have in your hands, it's a good hold. And it's at one point, it's just like the power gets cut and it's done and you fall out and you're like, oh man, why did I fall?
And welcome back. That is the live scene here in Chamonix looking down the wall. That's the women's route on the left, the men are on the right. And here is the starting list. We've got 26 women competing as per usual in a lead semi-final. Katarina Posch will be first out. Plenty of French climbers for the local crowd as well. Nina Artaud, Salome Romain and Noah Arc just in the top 10. Also keep an eye out there, climbing fourth, having qualified 22nd, Claire Burfind. Incredibly talented and promising all-round climber who had a fantastic Youth World Championships in Innsbruck last year, looking to translate it onto the senior stage this year. See there 3 Slovenian climbers climbing 18th, 19th and 20th, and quite a familiar looking one climbing 26th. She'll be joined by the familiar faces of Anak Verhoeven and Jane Kim in that final 3 out. So often seems to be the way in women's league climbing. Now we have actually got 28 men in the semi-final due to a tie in the qualifiers. Jakub Konechny will be first out, second. Be interesting to see how Sebastian Halenke gets back on his first World Cup since Arco last year. And we can see it there, 6 Japanese climbers in 10. Keep an eye out also in 16th place, Sam Avazou, son of Cécile Avazou, the 2-time French lead champion. And the names get increasingly familiar as we get down the list. Domen Skofic climbing 21st. Stefano Gasolfi didn't quite go his way last week. The local hero Romain de Grange is climbing 25th. As I say, there are 28 men. Apologies. I'm told that our software can only cope with 26 names. The 2 that you didn't see there is some guy called Alex Megos, who I hear is quite handy on outdoor rock, and Jakob Schubert, who's just good at everything. And there are the climbers observing the route. There's a mass observation period, and here it is. Somehow got to shepherd 52 climbers out onto the Place du Mont Blanc and shepherd them off again, all within 6 minutes. And there's Eddie, the IFSC photographer, now on his 101st ever international climbing competition. Matt, interesting selection of climbers, and it feels to me like a nice balance between the big names and the young up-and-comers.
Yeah, for sure. It's always nice to see, and it'll be interesting to see how those up-and-comers learn from those more experienced athletes. How much discussion goes on in this initial period? Are the older guys, more experienced guys, helping the younger guys through that first section, or do they keep themselves a bit to themselves?
It depends, I think. A lot of it depends on language. So you often see the English speakers grouping together. I mean, in the semi-final it's different because there's so many of them, but in the finals you often see the English speakers grouping together. But there are climbers we see who just like to keep themselves to themselves, and it's interesting when I have people helping me out in the commentary box. You get different answers when I ask them that question. And although I've never had it said publicly on a live stream, the odd climber has admitted to me in private that they maybe don't share beta they might have discovered about the route. I guess it depends how much of a ruthless competitor you are. Will Bosey there of Great Britain just walked across the camera. We saw Alex Megos in the background, and I mentioned there, just inevitably you end up observing with people that share your language, and you can see Team Japan there. Familiar figure of Tomoe Narasaki. I think that was Yoshiyuki Ogata closest to the camera. And there's Alex Megos in his cap closest to the wall. It was a pretty funny interview I did with him yesterday. You've been training for competitions? Oh, about a week before VLAR. So no, in other words. But when you're that strong, I think you can get by. And he had a brilliant day yesterday. 2 tops for him, doesn't get much better than that.
He was looking very, very strong, and I think the amount of outdoor climbing he's been doing recently, that 9B plus the other day, his first one, that's got to translate to pulling on plastic.
Yeah, they are very different activities, but I think the reality is if you're fit for one, you're probably pretty fit for the other, and we see plenty of climbers that perform indoors and outdoors. Jerne Krude has been doing a lot more outdoor climbing this year. It seems to have been paying off for him. So I don't think the gap between the 2 activities is that huge. And if you've got the fitness, I think you've just got the fitness.
Do you think we'll see Alex running up Mont Blanc anytime soon?
I very much doubt it. I mean, Bjorn Pohl took a picture yesterday of, day before yesterday, of Alex's calf next to IFSC photographer Eddie's forearm. And Alex's calf was smaller than Eddie's forearm.
Missing leg day there.
So exactly. I don't think alpinism is the sport for Alex.
No.
Actually, a few years ago, I worked here in Chamonix with Alex on a project, and he had to go alpine climbing. He coped pretty well, but I haven't seen him rushing back for more.
No, I saw on that
Put it way.
7B crack up the midi. It was that, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, wet trad crack wasn't exactly his forte, I don't think.
No. He was paired up with Tommy Caldwell that week, though, so I mean he had a pretty decent partner as they go. Now the climbers are ushered off the stage.
So in this period now, they're leaving, they're going to come back, and we can see the warm-up area on our left here. So they'll go back, they'll get in their zone, music on, just make sure they keep warm.
Well, I think they'll actually ship back. We were discussing the logistics earlier on. They're going to ship back most of the climbers to the isolation zone, because what we have behind the wall here in Chamonix is a very small warm-up area. I mean, it's more of a kind of staying warm briefly area. It's a very small little bouldering wall. So they'll actually take back most of the climbers to the isolation, and then they'll constantly shuttle them between the 2. It's not far to isolation, maybe 400 or 500 meters, but there is actually a shuttle bringing the climbers across just to avoid any potential issues.
I thought our job was stressful. That sounds terrifying. What happens if you lose one of them en route?
Like herding cats. Here you can see Mont Blanc behind. Beautiful setting for the wall here in Chamonix, and they've, cleverly enough, you always have the wall facing to the north, so it gets very little sun. It actually gets, one corner of it gets a little bit about 4 o'clock, and then between about 5 and 7 o'clock, the wall at this time of year does get pretty bathed in sun, but generally it's in the shade, and it'll be in the shade throughout this semi-final. We might see it touching the top corners, but I don't think it'll creep round enough to touch any of the holds.
The temperature is going to be interesting because yesterday it was very, very warm here on the wall. Does that favour the athletes going first? Because right now it's quite cool, you're still in a jacket. It's that nice climbing temperature, but it is going to get hotter throughout the day.
Yeah, but interestingly enough, when I was down the front of the wall yesterday about this time, the temperature doesn't seem to change that much. What I've found here in the past few days is that the sun is incredibly fierce. It's been a very dry heat here, there hasn't been that much humidity. It's a fierce, fierce sun, but if you're out of it, the temperature's pretty civilized, and it doesn't seem to change that much. I don't think the ambient air temperature is actually that high. Sunburn possibilities are very high, but if you're out of it, it doesn't feel uncomfortably hot, and I don't think the conditions will evolve a huge amount on the wall. But we're stood in the shade about 15 meters from that wall, so we'll know if it heats up, but it's a pretty decent climbing temperature now. I'd say high teens, low humidity. Ideal would perhaps be a couple of degrees cooler, but certainly pretty good conditions. I think tonight for the final conditions should be really good. We're expecting good weather all day here in Chamonix, which isn't always the case. They don't get a lot of rain here in the southern part of France. We often do seem to hit it. There's Fatah Barita there in the white cap. You could do worse than putting a tenner on her for an Olympic medal. Up and comer. In her home country. And we're underway. First climber on the wall, first of 26 women, 28 men. Katarina Posch, good to see her back in the business end of World Cups. And as we mentioned earlier, this women's route, relatively straightforward. It's just a case of hanging on. I'd have to say it probably won't favour climbers who are primarily boulderers, because it is a lot about endurance.
Those holds we can see her on now, it looks from afar like a sloper, but there is crimps round the back of it. So something to hold on to when moving through that first section. A nice warm-up for the athletes.
Yeah, I think one of the measures of the two types of routes is that when you stand underneath the women's routes, you think, well, I understand how a human climbs that, I'm just not strong enough. Whereas I went underneath the men's route, and every move you're thinking, oh, I'd go with the left, oh no, I'd go with the right, oh no.
I was doing air climbing as the route setter was talking us through it, and his hands were doing something completely different from what I thought anyone should do on that route. So I can't wait to see these guys try it out.
Yeah, Jakub Konechny will be first on. That first series of volumes, by the way, on the men's route, the black cheetah volumes, the grey sections of those volumes, there's no texture at all. Black sections, good friction, but they're quite awkward to use, but I'm glad to see he's negotiated them well, because actually your right foot could pop up earlier on those volumes. So I'm glad he's got through that. The route setters might have been a bit nervous had he popped off early on. Katarina Posch, seemingly untroubled so far, primarily a lead climber of course, so you would expect this type of endurance route to be up her street.
So Jakub there not using the left cheetah volumes at all, just going straight up to the big volcano pocket. Quite a long reach, perhaps if you're a little bit shorter that won't be possible, might have to work out a different solution through there.
Cracky angle down here on Katja Posch, and this is one of the potential rest spots on the women's route. There aren't many, but this is one where we might see them chalky up, and then there's a really aesthetic section here where they curve out to the left and then come back right, and she is taking advantage of the rest, a bit like we saw in on the men's route last week in Vilar. It's perhaps a rest for your forearms, but not much else. The wall very steep here in Chamonix. Yeah, whilst your forearms might get a bit of juice back, your core, your hamstrings and your calves more than making up for it. So it's a rest only for the forearms. The whole body's not getting much of a layoff.
Jakub here on that pinch section. Apparently there is a little crimp hidden in there somewhere, but it doesn't really do a huge amount. Much better to use that pinch as he did.
So Katja getting going again, narrowly missed the semi-finals in Vilar, 28th, 26th this time. Of course 26 go through. So she's consistent, and this time just the right side of the line. You might remember in Moscow actually earlier in the year, she made the semi-final in the bouldering, ended up 16th there. So we do see more lead climbing than bouldering. She's not looking too taxed here. The route setters wouldn't mind a couple of tops on this route. You might remember last year in Chamonix we got too many tops in the final, so I think they're pretty eager to avoid a repeat of that.
Such a fine line, isn't it? I would not want to be a route setter to get, you want a few tops, but you don't want too many people climbing it. It's a very, very difficult job.
Katja Posch is off to a really good start on this route. You can just see when she turned to face the camera there, a bit of a grimace beginning to show, and you can see the elbows just coming out as the pump kicks in. It just keeps on coming, this women's route. There's no move, particularly on this very steepest section of the wall, that's especially difficult, but there's none that are especially easy either. I think that was just marked the limit of her endurance just before the angle change, before the angle eases off on the top of the Chamonix wall. Jakub going well here on the men's route. He's in the middle of the wall, I was about to say, thank you, Mr. Director, in the middle of that huge triangular, I don't think we really call it a volume, a feature here on the wall in Chamonix. Pity the person that had to get that into place. And he's figured out the method. That is the way the route setters envisaged it being doing. Really uncomfortable move, but he got it right.
This looks awkward now. He's looking not, well, possibly in trouble here. Yeah, and he lets go. Did the 360 nicely, and then just seemed to just run out of maybe perhaps forearm strength to pull up for that next move.
Belay gets the choreography just right, gets him back on the stage. So 2 climbers in. Next out it will be Tjasa Kallen of Slovenia on the women's route and Basti Halenka on the men's route. There's Tjasa. Mentioned it when we looked at the starting list earlier on. Looking forward to seeing how Basti goes. Had a tough year with injuries over the past 12 months. Almost a year since his last World Cup action. And he's quite happy to admit that he's not in the best shape of his life, but more than good enough to make a lead semi-final.
He's a big personality here in Chamonix.
He's brilliant. He's great, yeah.
Always fun.
Might remember him winning in Kran in 2016. He's got the horsepower. So Tjasa of Slovenia, they had a great semi-final yesterday, particularly on the women's side. 5 women through, Tjasa being the first. Mina Markovic, Mia Krampel, Vita Lucan and Janja Garnbret, the other 4. And there is Basti Halenka, bottom right of the screen with the red mohawk.
Best hair on the circuit.
Certainly beats me.
Never tried that?
I'd love to have done. I think that ship sailed.
That Slovenian team is so strong, isn't it? So many athletes.
Yeah, Tjasa, by the standards of Team Slovenia, is a relative veteran, born in 1996. You look down our start list here. The birth years of the climbers: 2000 for Mia Krampel, Vita Lucan, also 18, Janja Garnbret, about to turn 19. Tjasa, capable of springing what would be a minor surprise here. She didn't have the best day in qualifying, hence her coming through, or coming out in second. She qualified in 25th place, but she has made finals before, most recently in Imst in 2016, finished up 7th there. You might remember Magda Rock winning on the enormous Imst wall. Tjasa was in the final then, and a European Youth Cup winner as well. So if you're looking for an early bolter, you can do worse than to keep an eye on this.
Sebastian worked out that bottom section. It's looking like the athletes are reading that pretty well at the moment. We were concerned that we'd see some early falls, but they all seem to be working it out. I suppose it's how much energy they're burning working it out, and whether it's the most efficient sequence through there.
Yeah, it's quite a relief when you see a very complicated section close to the ground. You are slightly worried that could have half the climbers falling low down, but 2 climbers out. So far so good on that complicated section on the men's route. And Tjasa about to get to that first semi-rest where we saw Katja Posch take a good pause. I think the tactics could vary quite a lot on this women's route. I suspect climbers that we see more in bouldering will think, right, I'm just going to keep moving here.
I think it is down to endurance, because that top section is pumpy. I think in isolation, if you were to just pull onto that section, most of the athletes wouldn't have a problem with it. But this bit here we're seeing her come into, it's a little bit off balance. It's using a lot of core muscles, a lot of leg muscles, and it just tires you out.
Top moves on the women's route as well, the route setters say. Like Matt just said, not perhaps especially difficult, but if you're pumped and your elbows come out, it just puts you in a position where you can't really hang on. The shape of the volumes is such that you've got to keep your elbows right underneath your hands, and if they start to creep out, which tends to happen when you get pumped, it's probably game over. So real test of endurance on the women's route, a real test of not only endurance but also route reading on the men's route. Efficiency, endurance key on the women's. Tjasa looking pretty strong at this stage, didn't take nearly as much of a rest as Katja. As we lose Sebastian Halenka, I was just watching Tjasa Kallen. We will try to get a replay for you.
So she's coming up to this first very tricky, cruxy section through those 3 volumes you can see before the change in angle. Hopefully she's got enough in the tank to get through that into the crimps higher up.
So she's choosing to rest here. Katja here was looking tired and was just battling, but Charles has taken a slightly different tactic. Didn't rest as much low down, but seems to have a bit more juice left higher up.
Struggling with that clip there, went for it, decided there was a better place.
Yeah, it seemed in Vila we had lots of problems with clips. People just struggling to find the right position. I mean, at this level of difficulty, clipping is really a move in itself. You've somehow got to free up a hand and be solid enough to keep that hand off for 4 or 5 seconds, it might be. So it really is a key part of it, and we saw Alex Megos have a real mess with a clip last time out in Vila that cost him a place in the final. Chasa Callan looking strong here. She's about to hit that change of angle. This will be a new high point. Now beginning to look a bit tired, but fighting hard. Not really what you want to see coming up. 2 more tiny crimps, and she just went with the left hand. I imagine she'll be awarded the plus for that one. Let's have a look at Sebastian Halenk. I was paying attention to Chasa. Just caught him falling out the corner of my eye. Let's see, did he read the route wrong? It looked like he may have done. Let's have a look. No.
That's that 360 section, isn't it, when they get the left hand in the pocket and have to spin. He didn't look set up for it particularly.
No, he didn't look like he quite believed. But I think also a bit of ring rustiness and perhaps, yeah, just a bit of fitness. But good to have him back, Basti Halenk, who's a big character. He's an exciting climber to watch. And we want to see him in all the World Cups.
See Francesco here having a little issue. He was using that cheetah hold on the left.
And this is the section we were talking about where it just gets a bit complicated. Chooses to clip so he can concentrate. Now there is a sneaky knee bar out here. Don't know if he's going to even look for it. It is so low down on the route. That's, I believe, the 4th clip. I think he might just get motoring. Michelle Hulliger of Switzerland climbing on the women's route.
Francesco struggling a little bit more than the other competitors at the moment.
Yeah, he burned a lot of energy low down. That was the exact section we've been discussing. We haven't seen it much on the big screen, but it's complicated. You've got to swap to underclings, swap from crimps to underclings. A bit faffy.
He used that knee bar you were talking about there, and the toe hook there as well. It's clever climbing.
So again, he's on the dual texture volumes. Grey bits, no friction. Black bits, high friction.
Now he's using that left-hand crimp that we're told was there, but isn't particularly useful. Perhaps might be a bit confusing for the athletes. If he's used it all the way, ignored the pinch.
3 Italian climbers on the men's side through to the semi-final today. Francesco the first. We've also got last year's Chamonix winner Marcello Bombardi to come, and Stefano Gisolfi as well. Interestingly enough, no Italian women through to the semi-final. No Laura Agora. Francesco looks like he's found his rhythm slightly now, settled into it a bit more.
It's so hard to tell from this angle how steep that wall is until he cuts loose like that, and you realise there's just not enough on your feet to hold you into the wall through those big volumes.
That's Michelle Hulliger, bottom right of the screen. Team Switzerland. Her compatriot Anne-Sophie Koller will be out later. Petra Klingler sadly didn't quite make it into the semi-finals. Would have been fun to see her climbing. But her focus still on bouldering. World Championships coming up. She wants to retain her title that she won in the most dramatic of fashions in Paris in 2016. So here's Francesco. Looked like that was close, going to the pocket. Needed to be accurate and was. Feet cut loose. This is so tiring, this position. He's trying to reach out. That's not the way to do it. You've got to go with the hand. And we lose Francesco. Perhaps paid the price for just taking a bit too long on that fiddly first section. But that's what the route setters put it in there for. Reward good route reading so that you've got more energy higher up. Here's Michelle coming towards our camera. Haven't seen that much of her, but having just tuned in, you can see she's beginning to grimace, but looks reasonably composed.
They're good holds through there. It's just the body position that makes it so tricky.
Yeah, it was an interesting insight actually from Michelle's compatriot Petra Klingler yesterday when she said, well, compared to bouldering, when you're on a lead wall, all the holds are good. It's just how long can you hold on to them for?
Do you think they're all good?
I think they're all Petra Klingler's version of good. They're not. They're my version of a foothold, but
look terrible to me.
Yeah. Getting plenty of encouragement here, Michelle Hulliger from the MC, and she just missed that hold. It's a decent hole she's going for.
Perhaps slightly blind coming around that volume.
Yeah, she looks really disappointed. I thought that was quite a good effort. Perhaps she felt she had a bit more juice left, and it was just a case of accuracy. Just missed that hold. It was there for the taking, really. Once you get there, it is a relatively good hold. Hanwoo Kim now of Korea, first of 2 Koreans in a row on the men's route. Hyun Bin Min, finalist last week in Vila, climbing after Hanwoo. Claire Burfind will be climbing next on the women's route. American all-rounder. Had a fantastic Youth World Championships in Innsbruck. A lot of people got a very close eye on her as a real all-rounder, a genuine all-rounder. Hanwoo Kim, will he figure this lower section out? That's the 3rd clip, so he's still close to the ground. Only just got underway, and there is Claire Burfind, bottom right of the screen.
No hesitation from him, them straight up into that volcano hold. No messing around. Will he find that little knee bar rest? He does, gets it in, or trying to get it in, not quite.
Claire underway on the women's route. Won the juniors lead boulder and combined in Innsbruck last year in the youth. She'll be there this September, competing in the seniors. Also had a pretty handy senior world championship in 2016 in Paris. Hard to believe the world championship's coming round again. Fantastic though.
Your hometown, are you looking forward to it?
Well, yeah, for 1 week of the year I get to walk to work. Both climbers similar height on the wall. You can see just above them that the angle changes. It really gets steep, a metre or so above the climbers. The first good rest just above where it says Walltopia for Claire Burfind. That's that decent hold where we saw Katja Posch take a reasonably long rest.
I think both these routes can be broken into quite clear sections. So as an athlete, you've got that knowledge that you're aiming for that hold, and you've completed that section, you can put it to one side and then move on to the next hard bit.
Claire resting, or at least shaking out, relatively low down. You might remember Claire from the World Championships in Paris, 7th there, made the final. As I say, really excited to see her doing more and more senior events. So now she's up to the rest. We'll keep an eye on Hanwoo Kim as well. He's not yet close to the volcano moves that have so far proved the crux of the men's route.
He's taking his time here, trying to get that resting position. Perhaps, again, that bottom section just took a little bit more out of him than he thought. He's getting really involved with that volume. Right hand up.
Claire's taking a good long rest here. And looks quite comfortable. Good mobility in the legs to be able to get some weight off the hands there. And now she moves again. Looking in cruise control right now. By World Cup standards, these are relatively good holds. Nice work, drop the knee, making each move as easy as you can make it. And this is where we lost Michelle Hulliger just a few minutes ago. Was this move up with the left hand? You've got to be accurate, but it's a good hold you're going for. And I think Claire just about got the good bit of the hold.
You sent some urgency in her climbing then. She realised she suddenly had to speed up, get to that little rest. Pump starting to kick in.
And just went up with the crimp with the right hand. Yeah, seemed to get tired quite quickly there. Seemed in cruise control through the out left and back right section.
One of those sections perhaps when you don't know how pumped you're getting, and then you get to a little crimp and you realise that you've got far, far less to go on than you thought you had.
So here's Hamil Kim. He's making his way up towards that volume section. Katerina Kiprianova climbing next on the women's route.
See his right arm there, almost chicken wing, shaking, just struggling with that section.
And there is the scene here in Chamonix, Place du Mont Blanc to the right, Mont Blanc itself directly behind the wall, and the wall itself. Speed wall on the left. We had the speed finals last night. You can watch the replay on YouTube and the highlights. But yeah, amazing venue here in Chamonix, and it's not a false summit, that is actually the summit of Mont Blanc. From the summit of Mont Blanc you can actually pick out the Place Mont Blanc. Incredible. If you've got a good enough telescope you can see people on the summit. Truly unique venue for a climbing competition. I have to say, until we have the Everest Base Camp World Cup, I don't think the view is going to be trumped.
Is that coming? Are we going to see that in the future?
I think they might put a bid in for next year actually, yeah.
Logistics involved in that.
I think the 2-week approach walk might kill Alex Megos, to be honest.
Might get bigger legs.
I need him. Katerina Kiprianova climbing here. Hyun Bin Min, previous World Cup winner and finalist last week in Vila, back in the World Cups. Good to see him. He's underway. I think a lot of people enjoyed seeing him back in the World Cups. I have to believe it was 4 years since we'd seen him. Seemed to have lost too much of his form. Korea do seem to have, when you start thinking about it, an extraordinary number of very, very good climbers. You've got Hyun Bin, Jane Kim, Jongwon Chon, Sol Sa. For a country you don't normally associate with climbing, they do seem to churn out top athletes.
There's good rock to climbing to be had in Korea. By the looks of it, that's down in South Korea. Looks pretty special, especially the bouldering.
To get over there one time, add it to the list. So here's Katja, bronze medalist in Hachioji in June in the bouldering. Again, real all-rounder, 28 years old. Plenty of experience in multiple disciplines. She's going pretty well here. Quite a tall climber. I think this route could well suit her, the move where we lost Michelle Hulliger. You've really got to go for it. And that hold will just be a tiny bit closer for her than it will be for some of the shorter climbers. But by the same token, it makes moves like this where you've got to compress yourself. That bit tricky. You need that bit more flexibility in the hips.
Yeah, she's putting her heel almost up by her head there. It's not easy, though. Got to work on my flexibility, obviously.
Find me a climber who doesn't.
Again, that drop knee technique through that section. Almost every climber has used that there.
So here's the move I was talking about. And she goes for the lower one. We saw Claire Burfine go for the higher one. They're both pretty good. The worry is that you get yourself in a bit of a tangle. You try and match the same one. You've really got to make a decision about where your left hand's going to go so you can free up the right hand. She's taking a bit of a rest. You can see her beginning to shake out more and more. This is clearly where we're going to lose quite a few of the competitors because it just gets so physical. And we do lose Katja.
That move into that crimp is so overhanging that unless you've got enough strength to be precise on it, you can't just slap up and hope on it. You've got to be static.
If you're just tuning in, just waking up, turning us on, for a start, it's a Friday, you should be at work. But welcome, we're here in Chamonix. Charlie Bosco and climbing journalist, all-round good guy, and how do I describe you as a climber?
I don't know, I'm not sure I've ever been described as all-round good guy. I quite like that.
I was just trying to find the right adjective to describe your climbing.
Oh, majestic.
It was on the tip of my tongue. That was the word I was going to use. Thank you for reading my mind.
That's fine, that's fine.
Alongside me, we'll be here for the finals tonight as well, kicking off at 8:30. One of the best places to watch climbing, the Place Mont Blanc, sun setting over the mountain itself. We're going to have 16 of the world's best climbers for you in action. We've got to figure out which 16 it will be though. Hyun Bin, excuse me, wants to be one of them.
Feels like he's been on the wall a long time by this point.
Yeah, we know he's got the endurance, but even his endurance being put to the test here. Nina Artaud of France, the 18-year-old. Had a good day in the women's qualifiers yesterday, not so much in the men's. If you watched our qualifying highlights, I mentioned it. Just two men through, Romain Desgranges and Sam Avazou.
It was great to see Bassamawam get that bronze medal in the speed yesterday for his home crowd.
Yeah.
Meant so much to him.
Yeah, he'd been blisteringly quick. He was felt slightly error prone towards the latter part of that speed climbing competition. You can see it on YouTube, obviously. From now on, though, in Chamonix, it's all about the lead. The speed climbers got a couple of weeks off. The lead climbers move on to Briançon next week. There's Hyun Bin Min. Just seemed to run out of juice. You said it felt like a long time we've been on the wall. Because of the staggered start times, the climbers don't start at the same time. We can't have a clock on screen, but it certainly felt like a long attempt. Hashtag IFSC WC on Twitter if you want to get in touch. Tell us your thoughts. Predictions always welcome. They are inevitably going to be better than mine, so don't worry about being embarrassed.
Nina looking very assured through that bottom section, no hesitation, straight up to the rest. Now just lets that left arm drop, trying to get the pump out. Again, that high heel, but not really using it to rest there, and a little toe hook as well.
Calm and composed so far. It's her first World Cup, Senior World Cup. Successful youth career without actually collecting a win, but podium earlier in the year in Munich. IFSC will be back there in just over a month for the last Bouldering World Cup of the season. But yep, Nina making her World Cup debut. Going pretty well. 100% success rate on reaching the semi-finals so far in her career. And suddenly climbing very quickly. Is it through urgency or is it just good sense? I have to say it looks like good sense. Finds the drop knee. She's being accurate. She's calm. She's got quite a big move to deal with now though, where you need to be both calm and accurate and committed. Reaches round with the right hand. Slaps nicely. The crowd enjoying this one. We can hear them even through our headphones. So climbing on the men's route, Marcello Bombardi, winner last time here in Chamonix in an extraordinary performance. Seemed to transform his season and his career. Nina, meanwhile, again going up for those crimps below the roof. That's clearly going to be the area where we lose a lot of our climbers.
Marcello always looking strong, a very, very muscly physique. Perhaps that helps him in this bottom boulder section.
Yeah, it's something we talk about a lot, but it is so interesting, even within one discipline of climbing, how different the builds can be. If you put Romain Desgrange and Marcello Bombardi next to each other and said they compete in the same sport, you wouldn't believe your eyes, but he's a big guy, Marcello. But with that comes strength and power.
But his endurance doesn't let him down. As you said, we saw him win last year. He can climb these longer routes. Look at that backdrop. It's unbelievable, isn't it?
Yeah. Mont Blanc right behind. We've got a return date with Mont Blanc, actually, haven't we, Matt? 4 years ago we tried to do the Royal Traverse.
We did.
Of Mont Blanc. And the weatherman, say his name in disgust, got the forecast wrong.
I'll be honest, that was a moment, it was a bit of a humbling moment in my alpine career, that one. A sudden realisation that I could actually get killed in this sport that I love. You were very calm, I was less so.
Don't remember that. I remember gibbering a bit. We've got a return date anyway. Marcello going well here. We would have cruised it. The older you get, the better you were.
What wasn't our fault, was the weather. Really, really, terrible blizzard at 3 in the morning.
Marcello looking like he's really having to scrap here. We talked about his endurance. He's going to need it because he's just done that very inefficiently. The fit cut loose, swung once and swung again. He somehow needs to get some energy back, but it's not going to be easily done here. He's just becoming slightly more jerky in his movements. Somehow he's going to have to manufacture a rest because his feet cut off there. And he wasn't especially quick through the lower section. I think if he finds a hold that's to his taste, we might see him take a rest in a slightly unorthodox position. And we lose him before the volcanoes. He's not going to retain his Chamonix title. After that win in Chamonix last time, he looked like he could take on the world and suddenly was making finals every week. Just looked like it never quite got going on that men's route.
It was almost like he thought the rest was coming and never quite did, because he didn't take the time the other athletes did lower on in that pinch volume just to have a shakeout. He seemed to move through that fairly quickly.
Yeah, and then slowed down just above it, and it was just never seemed to get going. Disappointed one for Marcello and disappointed one for the crowd. It was a fantastic, one of the best moments of the IFSC season last year, to have a guy come seemingly from nowhere to win in perhaps the most legendary of all the venues we visit. So here's Aya, opting to take the rest. Japan, well represented as you would imagine. Miho Nanaka will be out next. She made the final last time out in Vila. What an amazing season she's having in the bouldering.
That beeping you can hear is the cherry picker on our right, just moving up.
Yeah, of course the route setters here use the cherry picker lifts to set the routes. You can't set them on a route at this level of on a rope, excuse me, at this level of difficulty. So they do have a lift, and then once the action begins, they normally get commandeered, as they just have been for the photographers. So Aya launching into this next section as Avio Cano Blasquez makes his way out onto the stage. Apologies for my Spanish accent.
I didn't even try to pronounce it, it's fine. This interesting section here with the 2 holds. She goes to the lower one, then bumps up to the higher one. Moving through there very, very quickly.
Yeah, Aya's looking really strong here. 13th last time out in Vila, so top half of the semi-final, but only just. We lose her again, going through the roof. Interesting one. Quite a few climbers have arrived there, and look like they haven't been especially tired. The moves clearly not just a test of endurance, but hard in themselves. Because Aya looked, if not in cruise control, pretty comfortable, certainly well within her limits. So Javier here. 7th climber out on the men's route, and Aya was the 7th climber out on the women's route, so choreography going pretty well so far. Miho Nanaka will be out next, as I mentioned.
If you didn't hear it earlier, those cheetah holds, the grey section of them is so slippery. Absolutely no grip to be had at all for feet or hands. And very easy to put your foot in the wrong place on those and just go. So although it looks like a massive, massive hold, most of it is unusable for the athletes. To those bigger holds now. Left foot over. Chalks up before clipping.
There is Miho Nanaka just come out, bottom right of your screen. Already won a World Cup this year, not in lead. It's been the fight. We lose quite suddenly, it would seem, on the men's route. Sadly, that won't be enough for a place in the final for him. Sasha Lehman climbing next. Got Will Bosey of the UK coming out after him. Cleaning break, just to let you know, after 14 climbers in the men, we've got 28 in today's semi-final. So when we've had 14, we'll have the cleaning break, and the usual 13 climbers, then the cleaning break in the women's.
So we know Miho for being more of a boulderer. And there's something about her style that kind of gives that away. Perhaps something slightly more dynamic, a little bit more springy, if I could say that about it.
Yeah, she's had the most extraordinary season. She won the first World Cup in Meiringen, and then in the next 5 Boulder World Cups she was 2nd. So to not have finished any lower than 2nd in 6 of the first 6 Bouldering World Cups of the year, mind-blowing. Somehow not quite ahead in the rankings. Kia Noguchi's just been that tiny bit ahead. It all comes down to Munich.
Such a great battle between those two. I love watching them climb every week.
Kia Noguchi will be climbing 23rd, 4th to last. So we'll see her on this lead route. There's Sasha Lehman. Had a brilliant qualifiers in Vila last week and then couldn't back it up in the semi-final. Had a really disappointing day there. Miho, as you might imagine, trying to take something of a rest. If that hold feels like a good hold to you, if you're strong enough for that to feel like a good hold, then you can take a rest. Interesting enough, not chucking a heel hook up or anything like we saw most of the climbers do. Now she uses her heels. Will she have another rest here? We've seen climbers do that move and then take another rest, and she does, yeah, decides to chalk up. We've had a few questions, by the way, about the tape on Miho's arms. It's not a tattoo, it is tape. Tattoos pretty frowned upon in Japanese society, particularly on any regularly visible part of the body, so they're not tattoos, it is tape.
If there was a tattoo though, I quite like a tattoo like that, it looked great. Whoever tapes her up, I'll have to get the design. Heel, we haven't seen that often there, and choosing to rest. A lot of athletes moving straight through that section.
Keep an tonight. Sasha Lehmann, bottom right. He's just entering that first arête section with the really big grey and black cheetah holds. Not quite into the real meat of that men's route just yet. Miho Nanaka, meanwhile, very much into the meat of the women's route, and this is where we've lost a lot of climbers, and she'll need to find some endurance. She's got the power though, but you can see how hard she's having to work. It's such a stressful position to find yourself in, and that drop knee is just not quite as good for her. She's a tiny bit shorter, so she wasn't getting quite the same leverage off that drop knee. Again, for taller climbers, I think when they drop the knee like that, they can just push off it a bit harder, but for the shorter climbers, it's a bit more of a stretch, and when you twist the knee, you just can't get the same power through it. This is where we lost Miho. You can see the drop knee, having to work hard to keep that right foot on.
I was interested to see, because she took a longer rest just before that little cruxy section than the other guys. I was interested to see whether that would hold her in good stead for that next bit where you do need to retain that power. You can't go into it if you're boxed and struggling.
So here's Sasha. Onto the black volumes, he's very much onto the steep section of the wall here. There you see it, a huge triangle that dominates the wall, same wall we had for the Paris World Championships. Salomé Romain of France out next onto the women's route. Hails from Briançon. She has a home World Cup in terms of country this week, but she has a true home World Cup next week.
Looking like he's starting to struggle now.
Yeah, Sasha's having to work hard. Quite a few of the climbers I've talked to have been saying how strong Sasha's looked in training recently. And he's moved quite quickly through that section. He now finds himself on the volcanoes, but gets the clip done nicely. I wonder if we're going to see a different method. Surely he's not going to try and lever onto that foot. No, he's not. He's just finding a clipping position. You saw the grimace on his face. Not all fun and games being a lead climber. They grit your teeth sometimes. Finds a figure of 4, brilliant stuff. Crowd enjoyed that, and so did we. Goes up to the 2 black volumes. It's a really good effort from Sasha Lehmann, and you can see he's having to work hard, but it's a different type of hold here. It might give you a slight breather. He could do 3 in the rope up here, or get some rope drag here, which is the last thing he needs. Has he noticed it? I think he has now. He has. Now he frees it. But yeah, it's a slightly different type of hold through those volumes, and it looked like he just found a bit of juice back into big cheetah volumes. This is a superb effort, and he just drops it while chalking up, and he's got to be so frustrated with that.
Love to see that figure of 4 move. I've only ever done that with ice tools in. I've never ever done it on a climbing wall. I'm going to have to bust it out a little bit more. The routes I climb don't usually require it though.
Got more style than me when I'm mixed climbing. Most of it's on my knees, jamming my knee in cracks. We'll come back to Salomé in just a second. She's just heading onto the steepest section of the wall. We'll just have a quick look at where we lost Sasha very quickly. So he's chalking up, and it was the left heel hook that popped. Oh, that is such a shame for him, because it looked like he really recovered some energy. That is a real shame. Would have been good to see him in the final.
He used a different clipping sequence through there. Most of the guys were clipping lower down. He went into that left volcano before making the clip, and I actually thought he might have made a mistake doing that, but it looked pretty good for him.
It's such a shame. You might remember last week in Vila, Anna Verhoeven, it was pretty similar fall, had a heel hook that just popped. This time it's Sasha Lehmann. So Salomé climbing well on the women's route. Surely the shortest climber in the semi-final. We don't actually have all the heights in front of us, but surely. But she finds a way every time.
But I think that move suits the shorter climber. Being able to get that heel up, that compression move is difficult if you're tall. And you can see the speed she went through that bit.
She's a really enjoyable climber to watch. Talk about giving 100%. And she has to be so creative because of her height. And as you say, there are some moves that suit her better, but there are other moves that she just can't do the way the other women do them. And she gets so creative. And at times just relies on pure power, which she's got plenty of. And again, that move's looked quite a long move for some of the climbers, but even for someone as short as Salome, pretty comfortable. And she chooses to chalk up.
Getting the toe, Miho had the heel in there. Interesting to see that different styles between the resting techniques.
Will Bosey will be making his way out onto the men's route. We'll stick with Salome for now though. Sasha Lehman's just walked past our commentary box looking none too happy. So Salome, you might be able to hear the crowd. LA is the shout. These moves are so powerful. Really has to commit, but does it really well. Leads out with the right hand. Just caught a glimpse of her face there, betrayed the effort she's putting into this, trying to reach out with that right foot. This is such a difficult position to hold. She's going to need to have a rethink, and it's not a comfortable place from which to have a rethink. Swinging the right foot out now. Salome Roman needs to find a different method, or needs to get that right foot to stick. Either will do. Looks like she's sticking with the right foot. Crosses through with the left hand. And just sadly for her, too much energy lost trying to jab that right foot out. It's all judgment. You look over the hold and you think, yeah, I can get my foot on that. You have a couple of swings at it and suddenly you've burned a load of energy. It's tiny, tiny judgments.
So Will Bosey, a very strong rock climbing pedigree. Youngest Briton to climb 9A. Just starting to break into this competition scene a little bit more. He's still very young, still learning.
That was where we lost Salome. Tried to go for the cross through, but she looked tired 20, 30 seconds before that, and that would be a hard move if you were fresh. That's Charsa Callan leading the way. Sasha Lehman leading the way here, but he knows he could have done much better. He's sitting about 10 meters away from us. Looking pretty hacked off.
Sort of wry smile he just gave us then.
Quite impressed he managed to find a smile, but you're right, he did. Nolwenn Arc of France, the young 18-year-old, is becoming increasingly prominent in their team. She'll be climbing next on the women's route. Will Bosey going well on the men's route. Comes from Edinburgh in Scotland.
Very, very tall Will Bosey, and just looks like he's struggled there to get in a good position to move forward.
Very good speed climber as well, Will. And not too bad on the boulders either. Certainly one of Britain's leading all-rounders, and he's got the power to pull that move off. gives the crowd a tongue out.
It's meant to make this look difficult. What's going on? Ah.
I'm sorry to laugh as Will falls, but that was pure comedy moment. Sticking his tongue out at the crowd. And he looks like he's had a good time, still smiling now. Good effort from Will Bosey, nice work. And looked like he had fun.
He's got a great sense of humour. You might think he's dry when you first meet him, and then he'll give you a little smile.
I know, he's got that dry Scottish thing going on.
Yeah.
I have to say, it was really fun last year. I saw him and Jim Pope in Arco last year. Jim sadly didn't make the semi-final today. He has been here in Chamonix. And they were doing their climbing road trip, going to all the World Cups, getting a bit of climbing in between, dirt bagging it round, trying to find the cheap supermarkets in every town. It was great. That's how it should be. The true climbing road trip experience. Nolwenn, we haven't seen her face yet. She hasn't looked up at our camera, but from what we can see from her movements, untroubled at this stage.
It's cut loose move up to the rest.
Yeah, I've been impressed so far. We haven't lost anyone. It's not an especially hard move, but you have got to go for it. There'd be no coming back if you missed it. Keita Dohi out on the men's route again, 18-year-old Japanese climber.
You mentioned it earlier, the Japanese team with a very strong showing in this semi-final, a lot of athletes through.
It just always seems to be the way, and they just, if one of them doesn't make it, someone else takes their place.
I visited Japan last year, and the climbing culture there is incredible. It's a young sport, but it's so popular, especially in the bouldering gyms.
There's 100 climbing gyms in Tokyo alone, 400 in the country. But chatting to some of their coaches, I think personally one of the big things that makes a difference is the culture in the Japanese climbing team. They share information, they share training techniques, they share methods. Nothing is secret, no one keeps anything to themselves. If one of them knows something, they all know it. Real team mentality. It's all about the team doing well as much as the individual. How it is paying off. It's not far off dominating bouldering and doing pretty well in the lead as well. Janja Garnbret, Jane Kim and Anna Verhoeven keeping many of them at bay in the women's, but I think we'll see more and more Japanese lead finalists as time goes by. So Nolwenn choosing to have a rest. We saw her compatriot Salome Roman a few moments ago getting a bit of a tangle with these moves, just not quite sure how to do them, and she cuts loose and almost recovered it. Wasn't far off finding a way back onto the wall there, which is a quite incredible feat of strength had she managed it.
Amazing camera angle that, showing just how slopey that hold is. It looks like a crimp when you look at it straight on, but because of the overhang on the wall, very difficult. You can see her struggling there slightly, trying to get perhaps a toe out left, decided to bring her feet in more underneath her body, almost held it. What an effort.
Katie Dohe here on the men's route. Tina Johnson Hafsas of Norway. She'll be climbing next on the women's route. Previous World Cup finalist. Climbing 11th here. So after her, there'll be 2 more climbers. So 3 total before the cleaning break, when the route setters go up and clean what the section of the route that's already been climbed, which isn't much of the head wall on the women's route here in Chamonix. We've seen climbers all falling in roughly the same section. Not ideal for the route setters. They don't want ties going into the final if they could possibly avoid them. We had a few ties in qualifiers. We'll talk about that a bit more towards the end of the semi-final, should it become an issue. But they're pretty keen to avoid having more than 8 climbers go through to the final. We really do want separation.
We knew that bit was going to be the crux when we looked at the route, but we were expecting perhaps a few more to make it through to the pumpier section on that head wall.
Oh, and Katie just about hangs on there. That wasn't far off.
Finding a rest there and managing to shake out, but just 3 fingers on that hold.
Cross through, no first final for him, first semi-final today, but doesn't convert it into a final. Tina Johnson. Johannes Puman out next, Team Sweden. Looking pretty strong right now, Hannes. Be interested to see how he gets on. And then Yuval Shemler after him, Team Israel. Yuval was alongside me in the commentary box in Moscow, you might remember, back in April. Always good to see him on the wall.
Just to let people watching know, with the conditions here, the sun is fully out and blazing. The athletes are dodging between patches of shade on the way to the wall, trying to keep their hands dry.
Yeah, I said earlier that the temperature shouldn't change that much. I don't think the temperature is changing too much in the shade, but it's incredibly fierce when you're in the sun. Tina Johnson, you'd imagine, taking a reasonable rest here.
We haven't seen many athletes putting that high left foot in. The first couple seem to do it, and then we haven't seen a lot of that.
No, and then we've seen, again, climbers do one more move, take another short rest. So there's kind of 2 rests on 2 consecutive holds, it would seem.
Do you think in an ideal world it'd be better to go to that second rest and then have a proper shakeout with the heel on?
I think it's probably quite nice to have a rest and then change position, because a rest becomes less and less effective the longer you're there, because you get tired holding that certain position or that certain hold. So I think it's probably quite a good idea to take a rest in one position, shift it slightly, and then you're just engaging slightly different muscles to have your rest. I think it's clever climbing from who we've seen doing it so far. Hannes Puman's underway on the men's route. Tina Johnson, absolutely capable of making a final. She was 4th last time here in Chamonix, and I think if she can make it onto the head wall and make a good dent on that head wall, she'll have put herself in a very strong position to be in the final here again. She was also a finalist in Edinburgh, 8th that time. Lunged up with the right hand. Bit of an unusual one really for Tina Johnson. Didn't seem to be anything going too wrong. Perhaps just missed the hold.
I think from what we've seen is you have to do that move statically. The guys who've been jumping up to it just not at all successful on that. Perhaps it's a route reading issue, or maybe they're more pumped and feel they have to go for it.
Yeah, it looked like she went perhaps a bit too far, maybe even went past the hold. But as you say, static definitely seems to be the way to do that move. Hannes has found a really good, found the knee bar perfectly. That looks like it was made to measure.
Are you allowed knee pads on an IFSC route?
So he finds himself temporarily alone on the wall. Yulia Pantelieva of Russia will be climbing next, and Sophie Koller, and then a pause while the route is cleaned.
Now will he be tricked by this crimp coming up to this hold? Kind of palms off on it, gets a high left foot, drops back for the rest. We've seen a lot of people resting there.
Looking pretty solid so far. It's a nice effort.
It's got to be hard psychologically because you've done a lot of climbing to get to that moment. You look down, you're only about 4 clips off the ground.
Yeah, it's a frustrating feeling.
Again, one I get a lot when I climb. I think I've got a long way, look down and my belayer's head's just there.
Yeah, when he's still spotting you, you know you need to just keep moving. So you see there, Sasha Lehmann was not happy at all with his performance, but he's still leading the way, and Will Bosey's in 2nd place. Hopefully the judges gave him that plus just for sticking his tongue out of the crowd.
God, that hold he's got the heel hook on is not very good, incredibly slopey. He's taking his time here. Right on that tick mark you can see that shows where the good part of the hold is.
Now he's really having to fight, and he was really measured in that lower section, took every rest going, took every opportunity going to chalk up. Perhaps now needs to start motoring. You can see there quite jerky movement, sort of slap for that carabiner. Really beginning to shake out. Has he rested too much? Has he taken it too steady on the lower section, or has he measured it perfectly? We'll soon find out. You can see where he is there on the wall. Holds the swing and doesn't hold it the second time, and that's frustrating for Hannes Puman. Finalist in Arco in 2017, would dearly have loved to have made a final here in the legendary climbing town of Chamonix, but that won't be enough, sadly.
I think perhaps even he was surprised to hold that swing. He was looking tired, and it was a last-ditch attempt to try to stay on that wall. And I thought he had it for a moment. He really came out. And I think that pump just kicked in. He couldn't stick the dynamicness of it.
Yeah, we do seem to see it quite often where a climber will hold the initial swing, and then it's kind of the second swing. Mind you, it's one thing to hang on to a hold for 2 seconds. It's another to hang on to it for 5.
Especially when your legs are by your shoulder swinging out towards the crowd.
And again, we see the 2 rest method. So rest in one position, swing the legs around, rest in another. Yulia launching up. So all the climbers have pretty much breezed through this section, and then it gets really tricky from here on out. Committing moves, that hole slightly closed off by the one just above it. What will the method be? We've seen several different ones here. It's quite a committing move now. She doesn't look confident to launch from where she, from the position she was in, and that's a shame, because that was a pretty good looking attempt. It looked like she had some juice left, she got herself in a good position, but just, for whatever reason, didn't like the look of that move.
You can see her trying to put the knee bar in on the right, which we've seen a few people hesitate on that move. It does look like it should perhaps read like that. It just doesn't seem to give you enough pop up to that top hold.
So here is Yuval Shemla. Will he opt to take the knee bar? I don't think he's spotted it, actually. And now, yes, he has. But he doesn't use it as a rest, he just uses it as a move. He's on his way again.
Looking a bit snatchy at the moment. Quite big physical movements. And for me, this route is all about trying to climb it very, very efficiently down low and saving yourself for that 360 move. Those tiny little three-finger pockets up higher.
Also, I think the key might not be taking every rest going in this lower section. I think you saw with Hannes Puman, every time he got an opportunity to rest, he took it. And it looked like he suddenly realised that there was a lot of climbing to do and he was getting a bit tired. Apologies if you can hear some paper flapping around. That's our start list and notes. The wind's picked up here in Chamonix.
Wish you could have seen that, desperately grabbing at paper as it's going all over the place. Without that paper, we're lost.
When are they going to employ a paper holder for us? Come on.
Well, that was my job, wasn't it? Somehow.
Yeah, why have you got that microphone?
I've got no idea.
Get that off and get hold of that paper.
Bring your coffee, Mr. Bosco.
No two sugars make it snappy. So, here goes Yuval. So these black volumes, quite hard in the light we have here to really pick out the detail of those volumes. It's smaller round black volumes clamped onto that half moon cheetah volume. And there you get an idea of the angle of the wall. You can see the angle, sounds a bit strange, the angle of Yuval's chalk back. What angle it's hanging away from him. You really begin to understand quite how steep the wall is as we lose him coming off those volumes. Maybe a bit frustrated with that. Again, a bit like Hannes, took a lot of rest, slowed down. It's such a hard judgment to make. You might rush and think, oh, I wish I'd taken those rests. You don't know until you get on the route. But so much of the skill of the lead climbers is measuring that and reading the route well enough to know when to rest and when to go for it.
He never quite seemed settled with that route. I said, very aggressive, kind of almost stuttery moves down low. Didn't quite settle into it. Didn't look like he was breathing very much.
And Sophie Koller, the last climber before the cleaning break on the women's route. Midway through the semi-final, as ever, we have the cleaning break. Got Taisei Homo of Japan, 19-year-old, and Hidemasa Nishida, the 16-year-old Japanese climber, still to come on the men's route before the cleaning break. So hopefully the choreography should work quite well so that we never have an empty stage with just the route setters doing their thing.
Just thinking now when you said 16, what I was doing at 16 was not competing on a World Cup stage as an athlete. It's amazing to think that.
Yeah, it's very impressive, and one thing that I hope comes across when we speak to the climbers is how impressive they are. We often stick a camera in someone's face, give them a microphone, they're 16, 17, maybe speaking their second language most of the time. Incredible.
At 16 I was busy failing GCSE maths, so I think they're beating me on that one. Almost everyone using that left heel hook to make the clip there. And here's the hesitation. It's happened to a lot of people. They get through that half moon section, and it's almost like a stumbling block where they think it's going to be easier than it is.
And Sophie, what will the method be here? Again, she's choosing to rest here. It's just about positive. It's just positive, I would say, that hold. I had a quick look at it from the cherry picker yesterday when they were putting the routes up. Most people wouldn't be able to hang on to it, but for World Cup climbers, it's just about a rest. And as I say, Anne-Sophie is making the most of it.
You can see as we get to that cleaning period that all the chalk is on the left-hand side. That's where it is good. It's a lot worse towards the right.
It gets narrower as well, so you can't really engage your thumb at all. Pops through with the left hand. This is nice work from Anne-Sophie Collar. Will she get the clip done early? She thought about it, but she's going to go instead. Reaches out with the right hand. Now that clip's going to become a problem because she's got herself into quite an uncomfortable position. Can she bridge, drop the left knee and clip from there? She'll have to cross through. Can't leave the clip behind, and she leaves the crimp behind, sadly. Brilliant effort though, and I think again might be a bit frustrated. I don't think she was especially tired. You see as she comes down, she's not stretching her forearms, she's not panting for breath. I think she had a bit of gas left there. So drops round on the left hand. Oh, just lost momentum slightly through the move.
Perhaps trying to do it a little bit too statically. Maybe you need to use that swing, because she was battling against the swing by trying to do it statically.
Well, she ended up directly underneath the hold, and that's really the only angle from which it's not very useful. Taisei Homo of Japan. First 2 Japanese climbers in a row before the cleaning break.
Again, the angle of this is just slightly deceptive because it looks like that's almost a ledge he's holding onto there, but it's very, very overhanging on that section. So it's a proper sloper. Not a lot of opportunity to rest, but again, we see that high heel hook smearing the heel rubber onto that black volume.
He's making incredibly fast progress in his career, Taisei Homo. 10th in the Youth A lead in the Youth World Championships in Guangzhou in 2016. Made his World Cup debut last time out in Vila 6 days ago, and he finished 16th. So if he keeps up this rate of improvement, 10th in a youth competition to 16th in a senior competition, keep an eye out. I've long since given up predicting which of these swarms of incredibly strong and talented all-rounders the Japanese team have is going to be the one. But he's certainly one to keep an eye on. And nicely done. Just instead of committing fully to that move, he just bumped round with the left hand, with the right hand, excuse me. I was getting all confused. He's facing out to the crowd. The right hand just bumped himself over there. Just made the move look a bit less committing. I don't know if it was done out of necessity or good sense, but either way, nice climbing. And he finds the figure of 4 like we saw with Sasha Lehmann. Is he going to use it though? Just ran out of gas, sadly. Takes a final look up at the route as he lowers down with Mont Blanc behind.
That fig 4 can be a brilliant way of reaching higher onto the route. The problem was I think he had 2 or 3 fingers in that hold, and all of his body weight is then on those fingers. And you could just see him, he just didn't quite have the power to pull down and reach up for that hold. Tends to work better on a bigger hold where you can really lay down that power and not worry about the weight going through your fingers.
So there we see it, Chasa Callan, she was the second climber out, she currently leads away, and Anne-Sophie Collar, who we've just seen currently sitting in second place. This is inevitably all going to change. But they're the scores as they stand halfway through the women's semi-final. Michelle Hulliger currently down in 13th place, but all the climbers getting to at least hold 32. Over on the men's side, Sasha Lehmann, you feel, could have gone even further, but he still leads away. 40 for him, 33 plus for Will Bosey. And again, all the climbers getting to at least hold 24. So we haven't had, thankfully, any very early slips. All the climbers making a good dent on the route. The Glacier des Bossons creeping down behind the wall. Apparently a couple of centuries ago, as we watched one of the route setting team on the lowest section of the route just getting underway with their cleaning. Apparently a couple of centuries ago that glacier almost cut Chamonix off and almost made it uninhabitable because it was almost cutting off the supply route. Sadly, that's not going to be a problem for the foreseeable future as it creeps up the mountain towards Mont Blanc.
I don't know about you, but I came in this morning and the square was completely empty, and I got a bit of a shiver of excitement because that wall is just so impressive, and the history that is behind you is incredible. Charlie's laughing at me right now, but I got a shiver. I got a little tingle of excitement.
No, I'm not laughing at your comment. I'm laughing at the fact that you've created yourself a turban with a t-shirt to escape the sun.
This is true. I wish you could see this. I've during that little break, I dashed inside and grabbed a t-shirt because the sun has moved around onto our commentating area. I was getting a bit of a headache, so I'm literally standing here with a t-shirt on top of my head. I think it's a good look. There we go. See? I think
we've
it works.
got the Gore-Tex jacket on the monitor, we've got the laptop.
This could be a new style.
We've got the turbans.
I'm so glad I was wondering what you were doing down there, telling the director to turn the camera on. Thanks for that. Looking forward to seeing the comments on that one.
Glamour of TV.
Oh yeah.
It's not all guns and helicopters and supermodels here at the IFSC. There's also some t-shirt on the head. And
Did you not get your helicopter in this morning?
Well, I did, but I know there's no budget for you, so I just didn't want to rub it in.
I had to walk.
I think I saw you actually. I was waving to the poor people as my heli landed on top of the wall. Hidemasa Nishida of Japan. 16 years old. And an immense talent. Amazing to think even people that started climbing relatively early on to be in a World Cup semi-final at 16. His first World Cup semi-final, his 31st last time in Villars. Very strong all-round climber though. Third in the lead, third in the combined in Innsbruck Youth World Championships. And he's still in Youth B.
I think as the Olympics gets closer, we're going to see younger and younger athletes coming through. I mean, we still got the experience one, Roma de Grange is the obvious one to pull up, but I think the style of some of these routes, a really gymnastic way of climbing, really suits some of the younger competitors.
And we lose Hidemasa just going up for that volume. First World Cup semi-final. I think we can safely say it won't be his last. Let's have another look. So he palmed underneath the flat edge of that volume, and then I think he just missed the sweet spot. So the men's route will be clean now. When we come back, we'll have Yannick Floey and Sam Avazou. Looking forward to seeing him climb. Comes some good climbing stock. Hidemasa Nishida make his way out into the Place Mont Blanc. If you ever do get the chance to come to the Chamonix World Cup, bring an autograph book. And I'm just looking across at the crowd. We can't actually see the crowd from our position. They're beginning to fill up now. There will not be a square inch free come this evening for the final.
I was saying to you yesterday, if you're a climbing fan, this is such an amazing place to go because the athletes are wandering around all over the place, through the crowd, near the crowd.
And the athletes of it too as well. You see a lot on social media, people putting posts on. This was my walk to ISO this morning, I saw from Jan Hoyer. And they love being here as well. It's a legendary climbing town. The whole place drips climbing history and heritage. Virtually everyone you see walking down the street here is a climber of some type. Might be an alpine climber or a boulder or whatever else, but the passion for climbing runs deep in this town. It's a wonderful place to be. Doubly so when we've got weather like this. We do so often seem to hit bad weather here in Chamonix, but this year we've been blessed by perfect blue sky. It's an amazing place to come and watch a World Cup final. I described it to someone when they were saying they might come to a World Cup as the Monaco Grand Prix of climbing. You know, if you're going to go to one, I think Chamonix would have to be high on your list.
No, I think you're right, just for the views. If you're a photographer, it's hard to take a bad photo here because that, especially when the sun goes down, there's shots when the athlete fall off and you've got Mont Blanc bathed in this pink sunlight. It's pretty special.
Yeah, you get pink hour here. In reality, it's about 30 seconds, but most evenings, sunny evenings, you get about 30 seconds where the mountains go pink. Has to be seen to be believed.
It's funny you call it pink hour, I call it gin hour.
Gin hour's long since been and gone for me.
It's time, 11:30. Just a little insight on how we work here.
Yeah, it's 5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah. Very educated audience as well, as you said, a lot of climbers there.
Yeah, I mean, we often see when we go to new venues and new countries that the crowd aren't quite sure when to cheer. Sometimes they cheer a spectacular fall because that's what they think is the best action. But here in Chamonix, they're a very knowledgeable crowd. They know they're climbing and they know they're climbers. They know who these people are. Not many of these faces are strangers to the Chamonix crowd. Julia Fischer of Austria, she's climbing the cleaning break very quick here, very efficient work from the route setters. Yeah, the legendary venues in Europe though just keep coming. I find myself waxing on about Chamonix. We've just been in Villars. Next week we're in Briançon, then we're in Arco, and we're in the Olympic Stadium in Munich. Not really any weak links in the European tour.
And Munich a real highlight as well. Huge crowd always come to that.
Fantastic event, yeah, under the Olympic Stadium. We could do without the storms we had last year. I think we had one of the biggest storms in recorded history in Munich. Our van got written off from the amount of water it took in.
We don't really talk a lot about this section she's on now because most athletes are getting through it quite easily, but it's very, very steep, and those pinches will pump your forearms, which makes this rest she's on now pretty necessary to continue on.
So Julia, what will she opt for? Will she opt for the rest, the double rest? That might be the first time we've used that phrase, double rest.
DR.
Drop the DR. 21 years old. Actually made her World Cup debut 4 years ago. So she's racking up experience despite being relatively young.
A little bit of a shake on that left foot there, showing how much body tension is required for those moves.
She's been knocking on the door of a final over the past couple of seasons. 2 15th places and a 14th. 15th was last time out in Villars, 14th in Caran. Of course has access to the mind-blowing facility in Innsbruck. Mind you, I was chatting last week to Campbell Harrison, who's training there, and he said, yeah, but so does everyone else. May not be much of an advantage for the Austrian team, it is an open facility. Whatever they're doing there, it seems to be working for Julia here. She had a good look up at our camera then. Face did not betray a lot of effort.
Interestingly, she's using the far right-hand side of that hole, which we said earlier was actually the bad bit, but no problems from her.
I suppose by the same token, it does get you higher to where closer to where you need to be, and it's that move again. If the feet cut off, I don't want to say it's impossible to hang on, but it's pretty close to impossible. I've seen climbers do that move just fine, provided they can keep their feet on, but if they pop off, you're basically trying to hold yourself onto a 45-degree overhanging wall on 2 pretty pathetic holds. Let's have a look. Can't get much closer to the action than this. Cross through with the left hand. And as soon as that right foot peeled, you could see what she was trying to hang on to.
She looked fairly well set up for it though, because we've seen a few people with their feet too close underneath that hole, and it just doesn't work. So having that spread out, almost frog-like position is definitely the way to do it, even if she didn't quite pull it off that time.
Meiko Taki will be climbing next, and then Ashima Shireshi from the USA. Everyone enjoying seeing Ashima in in action in the World Cups. Felt like we had to wait a long time for her to actually be old enough to compete in World Cups. She's been a climbing celebrity, a big name in the climbing world for a long time. Finally got her in the World Cup. She hasn't yet turned it into a win. Immense promise. She remains unbeaten in Youth World Championships, but we'll see. First, Mei Kotaki. Always a pleasure to watch. Very, very determined. Like Salome Roman, very, very short. Often has to be a bit more creative, think of different ways of doing the moves. But always a pleasure to watch. Nice style, as I say. 100% fight at all times.
A lot of strapping on her right shoulder though. Hopefully that won't be too much of an issue on this route.
Yeah, one of the slight issues we have sometimes with bringing you information about the Japanese team is that there is a language barrier, and some of their coaches and some of the athletes are speaking increasingly good English, but and they're not always the glaring problem is they're always not that keen to tell you when you ask what the strapping on Mei Kotaki's shoulder is.
A lot of the time it's a preventative measure though. It might be an old injury and you just put the strap in there. Sometimes just to, as an athlete, just to know you're protected as well. It helps you psychologically.
Oh yeah. Men's route just being cleaned. Climbing on it next will be Yannick Floe of Germany. 28 men in today's semi-final. We had a big tie in the qualifiers. Quite a tie around 18th place in the qualifiers as well. I'm really hoping that's not going to come back to haunt the route setters. I hope they can achieve separation here in the semi-final, because if they don't, they'll be very nervous about achieving it in the final.
It was a long day yesterday. 100 male athletes, I think, trying to qualify for the semi-finals. 90 women. Full day, packed day of climbing yesterday.
Here's Yannick Floe. Yeah, so the men's route back in action. Yannick is underway. May's on the women's route. You see her in a lot of bouldering competitions, pretty successfully as well. So we're into the top half of both semi-finals. Remember, the climbers going in reverse order from the qualifiers, so the highest ranked qualifier comes out last in the semi-final. We had 4 climbers with 2 tops in yesterday's qualifiers in the women's competition: Akia Noguchi, Anat Verhoeven, Jane Kim and Janja Garnbret. None of those names will be unfamiliar to regular IFSC viewers. They're all still to come. Jessie Pilz narrowly missing out on 2 tops. She'll climb 5th to last. Mei Kotaki, meanwhile, is, as with all the climbers, cruising through that out left, back right section.
She does look very comfortable here. Perhaps being slightly shorter, that curved section of the wall suits her better.
This move, I think, is probably a bit harder for the short, but no problem at all. Clips from a very comfortable position and does it nice and quickly. Not the most easy way to clip that, kind of reaching across your waist and bringing the rope towards you. So Mei Kotaki, this is looking very promising. That's where we saw Julia cut loose to the feet and she couldn't hold it, and it just goes to show that if you've got your feet on, those holds feel okay. And the crowd beginning to perk up because they know this is a very good effort from Mei Kotaki. Can she do this cross through? We lost Salome Roman here, and no problem for Mei. Now the crowd really getting behind her. This is a superb effort. Could it be enough for the final? It's a long way to go in the semi, but it's a very, very good attempt from Mei Kotaki, and she's still going, and it's a change in style here. She finally gets off those tiny holds and onto big volumes. Will she be awarded that second volume? I don't think she could quite claim she controlled it. We'll see what the judges give her.
I think when she went up into those slopers, a little bit worse than she was expecting, and again, that's where we were told the pump was really going to kick in for the athletes who were going to get to that hold.
Really good to have a good look at that top head wall on the women's route as we lose Yannick just crossing through before the volcanoes. Well, we're seeing on the scores quite a cluster, not as many ties as you might imagine. Big tie on the women's side of things at 36 plus. You can see there Meiko Taki has taken the early lead at 43 plus. That was Sasha Lehmann, I mentioned it earlier. Furious with himself, might not be as the semi-final progresses. That score looking better and better as time goes by.
That's the thing, don't you? You just don't know what's going to be enough at this point. I remember a couple of years ago, Adam Ondra storming off because he thought he hadn't made finals, only to be told he had made finals, and the smile breaking out into his face. It's hard to know what is enough.
Here's Ashima. Grew up in New York City. Not many people growing up in New York City going on to become climbing prodigies. Parents are Japanese. She's bilingual Japanese and English.
Best shorts in the competition.
Comfortably.
I have to ask her where she gets that from. Think I could pull them off?
No.
Oh.
Gotta tell it like it is. So Ashima didn't qualify in the top 8. We mustn't place too much stock in the qualifiers, but in the past few years, what we have seen, particularly on the women's side of lead climbing, is that the really top climbers have dominated every round. They haven't come from behind and suddenly bolted in the semi-final and snuck into the final. The Janja Garnbret, Jane Kim, Anna Verhoeven, Jessie Pilz, they tend to be right at the top in every round. So Ashima is going to need to outperform her qualifying scores.
That split move is something that we see with Ashima a lot. So many photos I've seen of her in that move. She's very comfortable with that.
Sam Avazu out, as I mentioned earlier, son of Cecile, two-time French national champion. So that's good pedigree. For the best lead climber in France, you're certainly not rubbish. Strong climbing nation.
Ashima taking her time here, making sure she doesn't make any mistakes early on.
Just keeping an eye on Sam on the bottom right. It took a brief pause. I think he found the knee bar and he just looked down at him, but he was stationary for a while and now on his way again. I have to say, from the evidence we've seen, I would say on this men's route, maybe don't take every rest going. It's tempting to rest, but it seems that the so-called rests are taking a bit out of the climbers.
Ashima with a high heel. We've seen the toe put in there, but I haven't seen the heel yet. Doesn't look like it computes with physics, that move, at all.
No.
I wish I know anything about physics, but it looks unlikely, but she's managing to make it work.
Telling us earlier he'd failed GCSE maths as we lose Sam Avazu, excuse me. Sam kick in the air in frustration. I can see why. Yeah, you were telling us you'd failed GCSE maths, now you're talking physics.
Yeah, but I got B in GCSE physics. It's pretty impressive, that. Actually, that might be a lie. It was a C.
One of your physics teacher might be screaming at the screen, I remember you, it was a C. Okay, so Ashima, what method will she use? Slaps out with the right. Which hold will it be? Bottom or top? Goes for the bottom. Will she just bump it up? I think she probably will, or will she? She'll clip again. Not a comfortable position when you put your hand over your lap like that and then try and bring the rope across. It's not a comfortable position to clip from. It puts you off balance. Makes life difficult. So she's going as far right along that hold as she dares. It just gets worse and worse. You just got to make a calculation that gets you close enough to where you need to be.
She's clipping off that. Unbelievable. We haven't seen that often.
Now, this is where she's got to keep the feet on. She's secure now, but when she's at some stage going to have to move those feet, and if they just peel off unexpectedly, they pop. I'd be surprised if she can hang on. Gamba, shouts the venue MC. Go on, Ashima. Crosses through. We lost Salome Roman there. Mentioned it earlier. Ashima looking composed. She's got a couple more of these very small, slopey crimps, and then she'll be into the big volumes, but just crosses through with the left hand. That'll be enough for second as it stands. Looking at who is still to come, yeah, it'll be tight. It'll be very tight for Ashima. This was Sam Avazu. Where did it all go wrong? Trying a bit too much. I think they hadn't controlled the swing. He wasn't really in a comfortable position and cut their left hand loose. With the benefit of hindsight, and easy to say from the commentary box, might have been better to really get in a solid position before he tried to move the left hand.
It looked like he was almost going to swing that right heel all the way up in one move, and then sort of thought better of it, and then sort of got stuck in that swing out. And
so yeah, Shima Shireshi, she matches the high point of Chaza Kalan, but goes ahead on count back to the qualifying round into second. She'll have a bit of a nervous watch. 9 climbers still to come. Hannah Schubert climbing next. This is Shuta Tanaka of Japan.
Here's the little shakeout we've seen everyone utilise. Just takes him out, fiddles with his shoe. It's not what you want in that position there, just adjusting the Velcro there.
There is Hannah Schubert looking up at the route, ready to go. Her brother will be climbing later, will be climbing last in the men's semi-final. Jakob won last time out in Vila. Apologies, we just got an ambulance going past the venue here in Chamonix. We're right in the middle of the town centre, so you do get every sight, sound and smell.
Above us, paragliders coming down from Brevon. It's just, there's so much sport going on around us right now. It's incredible.
So Shuta Tanaka, 12th in Vila. Can he make his first World Cup final appearance in only his second lead World Cup? So that's where we lost Sam Avazu, and that's what I was referring to. He kept the left hand in place. Yeah, the feet cut loose, and there's probably a bit of a heart in the mouth moment, but he kept the left hand in place until he'd killed the swing, and then he moves on.
A lot of core tension required for that move. You can just see his core tighten, bringing him back into the wall.
Just watching Hannah Schubert on the bottom right, looked like she just hesitated on one of those lower moves. I think when there's a section of the route where, although the climbers aren't aware of this, everyone else has cruised it, and we've seen all the climbers cruise it. I think, speaking to some of the climbers, they say that they're almost a bit shocked when the route's a bit easier than they thought. You're coming out expecting this battle, and you almost hesitate because you think, oh, these moves feel too easy, that next hole can't be as good as it looks, but it is a relatively cruisy start for the women. I think Hannah's now found the rhythm a bit. She's got this slightly committing move up to the start of where you can get a couple of rests. And I think she'll pause there as Shooter pauses on the men's route, has a big shakeout.
Yeah, I was watching Hannah. He's been there a while now, just trying to milk that rest, knowing there's a tricky section coming up.
He won the Youth A lead in Innsbruck in the Youth World Championships last year, Shuta Tanaka.
Trying to hold that open hand is hard because he's been open-handed on the black volume, then he's got to go to another open-handed move, so his fingers just uncurling there, and finally into a more crimpy hold, which is going to give him a bit of a break.
Yeah, you know things are desperate when it's a relief to get to that hold. Hannah Schubert taking a long rest. Shooter swings out to the left. He's taking every opportunity to shake pretty violently his forearms. Needs to commit with that left hand. He's looking a bit tired now, but holds that tough iron cross almost position. He needs to find a way to clip. He can't go with the feet. He's going to have to commit to go in with the left hand, or is he? So he's done a nice job there. The problem is that where he's got his left foot is a dual texture hold. It's only good in the hold, so he's going to have to get his foot out and simultaneously get his hand in, just like that. The right hand is in. He looks really reluctant to commit to having his feet off, and that's why he's just running out of gas a bit so he can join Hannah. Get Sean, says the MC.
Because this move has become such a sticking point for the women's comp, it's been fascinating to see how every athlete approaches it, because there's a lot of differences between them. It's not like they're doing the same thing and falling in the same way. Almost every one of them has a different solution. You can see Hannah with the heel in there rather than the toe.
Now she crossed through, she's got to keep the feet on. We lost her compatriot Julia Fisa on that move when she didn't keep the feet on. But Hannah is really fighting now. But she will be rewarded with a change of angle if she can just get a couple more moves done. You can see how poor the holds are. You can see in her face though, she still looks in control. She's not grimacing. And on what I've just said is a very poor hold, she actually takes the opportunity to chalk up. What I understand from talking to her and the people she's been training with, the winter's been very successful for Hannah. She's had a really productive winter of training. How's it going to pay off? She's just trying to recover a bit of strength before she launches into this section where there'll be no opportunity to rest because there's not much for the feet. Now she goes onto the crimp. She's got 2 more until she reaches those blue volumes. There's the first of the 2 and we lose her there.
I thought she made a mistake by trying to down climb that move, but actually I think it was super smart. She knew that she was never going to make that move with the amount of pump she has. Just down climbed, found to reach through to that bad pocket.
Yeah, she was pretty accurate there. Didn't really miss, but came at it perhaps with a tiny bit too much momentum. Just not quite static enough. I've just been told that Yoshiyuki Ogata actually fell off very early on. I thought he was actually coming out to climb and they'd had the first quick draw clipped, which seemed strange.
Perhaps on that dual textured hold we're talking about, I mean, I had a feel of that earlier, and it's so slippery. Because that was where there's a little thin black bit of textured hold right next to the grey slippy section. And the route setter told us, look, if you get this wrong, this bit, you could fall off it.
Right, now we can see it all. This was Yoshiyuki Ogata. As I say, we panned him and I thought, that's strange, why have they got the first quick draw clipped? It turned out his attempt had ended very quickly. Let's have a look. So he's on the dual texture. The Chamonix volume has texture. The black sections of the cheetah volumes have texture. The grey sections do not. So where does he go wrong? And we keep fast forwarding it.
I think it's the right. He seems to put his right foot up into that section where there's that dual texture. That's where he popped, just rolling off the edge of it.
Here's a Kokora Fuji. Familiar figure of Mina Markovic.
Mina's such a veteran in this game. So much experience she brings here.
Yeah, well, theoretically, she was retiring for competitions a few years back. Any talk of that has long since disappeared. She says it's where she feels she belongs. Kokora Fuji is out climbing on the men's route. Mina Markovic on the women's. So Mina, the 9th to last climber. So she's the last climber that can't guarantee herself a place in the final, basically. We want 8 women and 8 men into the final. The ties are possible, of course.
She looks like she's having a bit more of a battle down lower on the route than some of the others.
It's been a strange experience watching Mina Markovic in the past few years. She has days when her head just don't seem to be in it. She doesn't seem to be able to read the route. She just seems unable to figure out the moves or not confident to do them, and she's quite open about the fact that mentally she's just not quite there. A bit early to say which Mina we're seeing today.
Deciding not to take such a long rest on that, perhaps knowing that she's burnt a bit early on, needs to move through this quickly.
Apologies for that noise, it's just some adjustments being made to the warm-up wall behind us. What will the method be here? Mina, not quite as tall as she looks, if that makes sense. She's not a tall climber, she's just so lean that she actually looks taller than she really is. So that move there, not super easy for her, and again, clicking from that uncomfortable position. Kokoro Fuji, meanwhile, seemingly in cruise control on the men's route.
Mina looks like she's really built her momentum up here. As I said, she looked like she was struggling down low. Now has kind of almost got herself back into this route.
I think psychologically it is hard if the lower moves are maybe easier than expected. You can't quite believe the moves are as they are. You move slowly out of natural caution, and actually you could have just rocketed up them. And that's a bad place to have that happen. Tried to clip from a really awkward position. That's a terrible hold she's hanging on there. It's fine as long as you've got your feet on and the other hand to help you out, but if you've only got one hand on and you can't get hold of it because that long quick draw swinging around, that's a very uncomfortable position in which to find yourself. You can see her again looking up at the quick draw, trying to figure out where to clip from. She's thinking, can I get another move and will that be a better position to clip from? Decides not to risk it, maybe better the devil you know, and now gets the clip done. We lose Kokoro Fuji. Too low for a place in the final, almost certain. Didn't see exactly where we lost him. Here's Mina. Really, really, really beginning to battle now. Needs to cross through somehow with the left hand. Finds the drop knee just in time. He got the impression that was what saved her. Now she seems to have recovered a bit of composure, seemingly in the space of a couple of seconds. Pops up with the right hand. Now this next move is where Hannah Schubert fell, and Mina does not quite make it, and she's furious with herself. She just had a messy minute or so climbing there. Started out with that missed clip, then couldn't quite seem to decide where to clip from. Decided, got the clip done, seemed to regain some composure, and then I think perhaps just made a bit of a mess of the feet here. Let's have a look. She looks solid on this move. Just begun to peel backwards and never quite got her feet back on.
Anyone wants to know why a drop knee is a good thing to learn in climbing, you should look at that as an example. Unbelievable. You could tell how pumped she was, and just by dropping that knee down, it gave her enough stretch to reach into that pocket. Such great technique from her.
Yeah, you can see there how much weight is going through her feet, which is really the only way to get through moves like that. So she popped up, let's have a look, feet cut loose, she held it. Now then, did she even get a chance to place that right foot? She didn't. She knew where it needed to go and she never had time to get it there. Here's Tomoa Narasaki. Tomoa also the ninth to last climber, the last climber who can't guarantee himself a place in the final with a good performance.
I'm looking forward to seeing him. Hopefully he gets that 360 move as a boulderer. I reckon that's going to be fun for him.
I'll be interested to see what the tactics are from Tomoa. Will he just keep motoring? Will he just keep going? Or will he try and take some rest? He's becoming an increasingly proficient lead climber, 3 podiums already. Doesn't need to climb like a boulderer, which perhaps he did when he first started out in the league climbing. Mia Krampel now, second of 3 Slovenian women in a row on their route, climbing 19th. Vita Lukin will be out next, climbing 20th. And we see there Mei Kotaki, 43 plus, likely to be enough for the final. Tomoa doesn't fancy hanging around too long on that knee bar, wants to keep moving. Seen climbers resting here as well. We're not going to see Tomoa resting.
Again, that dynamic, almost bouncy style of climbing, just popping up between the holds. Quite energy efficient to do that if you've got the strength for it.
That's the big if, isn't it? Because they're not super hard, dynamic, powerful moves for Tomoa. Because he's got so much to spare, he can just pop between the holds.
Sideways to the wall there. Quite a bicepsy move just to hold yourself into the wall.
Very confident on that move. It's not a huge sweet spot on that volume. We have seen climbers falling off there. Tomoa knows the hold well. That's one thing when you go to the Japanese climbing gyms. They have the most incredible selection of World Cup holds. There'll be almost no holds here that are unfamiliar to the Japanese climbers, and Tomoa knew exactly where he was going with that one.
Cameraman just taking a picture of me with my t-shirt on my head. Ah, dear.
Two English people in the sun.
Tomoa going for climbing above that clip, then making it. He's got to make a decision here. He's going to clip low. Is he going to go into those?
Ah, and he reaches out and misses with the left hand. And I have to say, I think that was legally a reasonably borderline clip from Tomoa. He was a long way above that draw when he clipped it. But won't matter anyway. Pretty sure we're not going to see him in the final. Mir Krampel, meanwhile, powering up through this section into what is proving to be the crux for the women. This series of crimps that are just beginning above top right of our shot.
So Charlie, are the route setters going to be starting to get concerned that we're not seeing athletes get through that head wall? Or are they thinking, look, we've got the strongest coming up potentially, it's all going to be okay?
I think in women's lead there is still quite a gap between the top climbers and perhaps the lower half of the semi-finalists. You do get people out of position in the qualifiers, but I think there are clearly a handful of women that are just that step ahead. So I don't think they'll be too nervous just yet, but I think they'll be pretty relieved if they can get someone to at least match or surpass Meiko Taki's high point in the next climber or two. If we get to that top 5 of Jessie Peltzer, Kira Noguchi, Anna Verhoeven, Jane Kim and Janja Garnbret, and we still haven't seen Meiko Taki's high point beaten, then yes, I think it could well be. Bit of nerves that we could end up with a big tie. Mia Krampel, the latest to try her luck, and the feet cut off. If your feet cut like that, I said it earlier, it's not impossible to hold on, but it's pretty close. Domen Skofic climbing now. He can guarantee himself a place in the final. As it stands, Sasha Lehmann is in the final, which, given how he looked when he came and sat by us by the commentary box, absolutely furious with himself, pretty happy with. Domen, a previous winner here in Chamonix.
It's funny with Domen because he's still very young, but I always get the feeling with him that he's got a lot of experience to play, and it seems like he's been climbing for a very long time.
Now then, is he looking for the knee bar? Has he seen the knee bar? Does he want it? No, he doesn't. Either doesn't see it or doesn't want it. I think doesn't want it. There's kind of a perfect height, it would seem, or perfect length of lower leg where that knee bar is quite comfortable. Domen looked just a tiny bit too tall for it. But as I say, we've seen a lot of climbers maybe rest a little too much on the lower section of this men's route, so perhaps the tactic is just to keep on motoring. Vita Lucan will be out next on the women's route. There she is, bottom right. So Slovenia and Slovenia. Right and left here in the Chamonix wall. If you're just tuning in, Charlie Bosco and Matt Groom here, live in Chamonix. In the legendary Place du Mont Blanc. The women are climbing on the left on the blue and red holds primarily, and the men are black, grey and red on the right hand side of the wall. The sun is shining, the wall is shaded, conditions pretty good in the shade, tough for the crowd, but then they don't need to be climbing these routes, so they'll live.
Tough for the commentators.
Brutal.
Boiling out here.
Should have a word with the union, conditions are terrible.
No one's bought me any water, there's not a beer. It's very early still actually, I don't know. Feels like we've been here a while, but not quite beer o'clock yet.
Domin not really liking the move up to this volume, really having to commit to it. Looked solid once he got there, but yeah, really didn't like the look of that. And again, almost a desperate slap there from Domin. He's got it under control. Once he landed, he looked okay, but looked very unsure of those moves.
He missed the tick mark there. It's quite easy to see that tick mark from below it, and he just went too far to the right. And you saw him having to readjust, bump his hand a little more to the left to hit the sweet spot.
Yeah, a couple of heart in the mouth moments for Domin Scofish, but seems to be on his way again now. I think he'd take a rest as much for his mind as anything, just get himself reset. His compatriot Vita Lucan is climbing on the bottom right hand side of your screen on the women's route. She is the 7th to last climber. So we know we've got Meiko Taki in the final.
Yeah, Domin not quite looking comfortable on this at any point. Perhaps not suiting his style.
I think he was very relieved to be back in the league climbing competitions. He hasn't enjoyed the bouldering quite as much as he'd hoped to in the past couple of seasons. But yeah, I agree. So still doesn't look as comfortable as he might. Suddenly seems to have regained a bit of composure. Nice footwork to get some weight off the arms. But yeah, he looks as if these moves are taxing him, and he needs to find somewhere to clip. He's in a very awkward position should he fall off now with the rope behind him. Be quite the fall, quite the uncomfortable fall. He won't be thinking about that, though, completely lost in the movement, but he does need to find a way to clip. Nicely done from Domin, backed himself to do the move.
That bicycle technique on that black volume, one toe hooking, one pressing.
You can see he's got power to spare. Now, can he slap up to these black volumes? Legs were kicking, and no, he can't. Frustration for Domin. A couple of moves there, a couple of sections where he never seemed to quite get going. I haven't seen many climbers actually get to where he got to, though. We'll confirm his score in just a second. We're focusing now on Vita Lucan, also of Slovenia. Domin was the last Slovenian man out. There is, of course, one Slovenian woman still to come, Janja Garnbret, her familiar position, climbing last in the semi-final. When we get our start list at the start of the broadcast, 26 Garnbret is a familiar sight. She'll be out next. What can Vita do?
She's been going very well. We've been watching Domin. She's quietly sort of been getting on with it there. Doesn't make Mina's mistake of trying to clip off that bad hold.
No, she's backing herself to find a way to clip.
Problem is she's gone a long way past it now.
Yeah, and I'm wondering now, she'll have to come back slightly. She's having exactly the same thought process. And this could be a bit of a disaster for her. I think she knew she couldn't get any further without clipping, but she couldn't clip. So had to go for the plus there. Here's Stefano Chisolfi, man you know well.
I had a tour around his van the other day, in fact. It was he's got a brand new van, very shiny, very smart.
Climber's version of having a new house.
I asked him why he didn't build it himself, and he told me his DIY was terrible.
At least he's honest.
We bonded over that. I think mine's equally bad.
Now a resident of Arco. Not a bad life, is it?
No.
Originally hails from Turin, which certainly no dump either, but Arco takes the biscuit.
He seemed a lot happier recently. That move, I think, has really settled him, and he feels at home in Arco. He's got a strong training group around him, and yeah, some projects out there in Arco as well that really keep him interested.
He's not going to run out of climbing, that's for sure.
There's a bit of rock there, isn't there?
So, knee bar, yes, no, no. The rope over his arm shouldn't affect him too much physically, but it's slightly awkward and slightly distracting. Still needs to get it free. Also means he's got a bit more slack than he wants. He's pretty close to the ground.
Attempted
There we
being
go.
needed.
Yes, very attempted, but now he needs a slack to clip. Good job, the belayers. I can't remember the last time we had a belayer that caused a technical incident and caused problems. There have been incidents, but I can't recall one recently. Here's Manon Illy fresh from 4th place in Vila.
I was so impressed with that climb in Vila. She's someone who wasn't necessarily that prominent on my radar, and just watching her climb was incredible. Such strength, such commitment. Stefano just taking the rest there, looking very calm. Seems to be two ways of doing that bottom section, frantic or chilled. And he's certainly the chilled version.
Manon Ely, meanwhile, not quite into the meat of the women's route just yet. Just heading up to where the wall steepens. Keep an eye on her. So Sasha Lehmann is in the final, which he'd have taken. I cannot describe how annoyed he looked. He came out and sat near our commentary box, gave us a rueful smile, and sat there kind of berating himself, silently cursing. And he's in the final.
I think he just thought he could do better. I think, you know, when you know you've fallen because of a mistake rather than a technique or a strength issue, it's got to be so frustrating. Kind of taking a break on those slopey black volumes.
Yeah, we lost Sam Avazu on there, but you can see Stefano's experience. Took it nice and smooth. And Manon Ely is at the rest on the women's route.
Stefano, a little glimpse down to the crowd there. He's very popular in the Italian team, and they'll all be cheering for him. I'm sure he can hear that up on the wall.
Came pretty close to winning the overall title last year in 2017. There's only one place for him to go in terms of overall rankings. He'd be a very popular winner if he did manage it, as was Romain Desgrange last year. It was the battle of the nice guys and the crowd favourites last year. Don't think many people were too bothered who won, as long as one of those two did. But it would be nice for Stefano. He's always there or thereabouts, 3-time World Cup winner. What can he do here in Chamonix? Interesting enough, only ever won World Cups in China. Can he break that? Do it in Europe?
He makes that look so much easier than everyone else we've seen gone before him.
He's now realising what is required. That's really smoothly done. He cut the feet off early. So what it's tempting to do is to keep your feet on and then swing at the last minute, but Sassano got them off early, and it's paying off now because he's onto those black volumes. He is the 7th to last climber. He's going to be in the final. We know that already. How high can he get? We haven't really seen anyone come close to topping this men's route. We haven't had anyone get off the steepest section, and again the rope is caught. Sasha Lehmann had this exact problem. The rope caught around that black volume that he's got his foot hooked around. Now we saw Sasha in these volumes with a heel hook with the left heel that gave way. What can Stefano do? You can see he's having to really battle now. This is still on the very steepest section of the wall here in Chamonix. There's a tiny crimp between those volumes. There's hardly any textured section of the hole to find, but he's managed to find it. Slaps up with the right hand, gets the screw on hold. This is a new high point from Stefano Ghisolfi. He's definitely going to be in the final, but how much energy is going to be required to get that clip? Quite a lot, it would seem. Has he got anything left? He doesn't, but he sets a new high point. He guarantees himself a place in the final. Stefano Ghisolfi is going to climb at sunset in front of a packed Place du Mont Blanc. And we lose Manon Ely.
Yeah, I was just about to say, she climbed past the clip and it looked like she was trying to have to down climb that move again. It's confusing. It's confusing to work out, well, just how to do the moves, but also the clipping position isn't obvious as you come into that. You can see the frustration in her face there. You feel if some of them could just move through without having to clip, that section would be so much easier.
There are the routes here in Chamonix. Women are on the left, men on the right. Already it's 12 o'clock, 2 hours is semi-final. It's a relatively long semi-final. The estimated time of finishing was 12:30. We should be just about on schedule, but certainly haven't had many climbers, with the sad exception of Yoshiyuki Ogata, who've dropped off very low on the route. Everyone else been at least 20 moves in. See it there, Mei Kotaki's high point still stands. How many climbers do we have left? We have 5, and that means that the top 3 there, Meiko Taki, Hannah Schubert and Shima Shirashi, guaranteed their place in the final this evening. The remainder of the provisional top 8 watching nervously as the final 5 climbers come. Here's Jessie Pilz. Somehow never won a World Cup, 10 podiums. Surely has to break that duck one day. So here's Sean Bailey of the USA. Won a silver medal in Vail in the bouldering. He's quite open about the fact that he's more of a lead climber than a boulderer, so if he can do it in the boulder, he can do it in the lead, that is for sure.
Great watching him in that Vail comp. You could feel the home crowd advantage really spur him on through that.
Yeah, it worked for Alex Puccio, it worked for Sean Bailey.
She's very neat when she climbs, very, very delicate, very precise with her movements.
Not someone that gives away a lot. Jessie Pilz, you try and grill her for information. How are you doing? Any injuries? I'm fine. Okay. Keeps her cards close to her chest. So well she should. Certainly expect her to be in the final. What we saw last week, Anna Verhoeven, she just had a slip very low on the route and missed out. So anything really can happen. You can't take these moves for granted. The climbers might have an inkling from how long the semi-final's been going on that people are getting reasonably high on the route, but they won't know if it's been topped. They won't have a huge amount of information. Sean Bailey could do with getting moving here. We'll be getting tired on these moves. Again, knee bar, yes, no, yes. I think briefly. Takes the opportunity to chalk up. Apologies again, another ambulance coming past our position. I said earlier, we are right in the middle of Chamonix town centre. Jessie Pilz cruising at this stage up to the rest. Just saying, I don't think we've seen any climbers fall before Walltopia there, where Jessie currently is. Off the top of my head, everybody's made it that far.
I think that hold she's got her left hand on, to you and me, is a horrible thing, but to most of these guys is a big jug, and I think that's what's keeping them on the wall.
Just able to get some energy back. Interesting, we'll chat to the route setters after the semi-final and ask them how they found it. I wonder if they might look back and think, yeah, maybe that was too much of a rest, because it's always been a reset. Jessie's taken a relatively short break, but a lot of the climbers taken a pretty long break there. I wonder if they might think, yeah, maybe we should have made that a bit less of a rest. We'll see. They were hoping for a top or two of the route. We haven't really seen anyone come close to that yet.
It may be hard, but it is spectacular. Both the men and women's routes. It's amazing. It's great to watch these guys, even if they're falling perhaps a bit too early on. But I'm seeing a lot of climbing, a lot of emotions coming out through the routes.
And different tactics, particularly on the women's side, for dealing with this section Jessie's entering now. Different methods, different strategies of when to rest, how to rest, when to clip, how to clip. A lot of tactics crammed into what is really only about 10 moves of climbing.
Sean Bailey cutting loose there. I see a lot of people do that. And he's going to put that heel up, find that rest. Have a bit of a breathe.
So Sean about to enter the section where the finals places are decided. Jessie the same. Both climbers at a critical point on their route. We'll stick with Jessie. She's looking really solid here, Jessie Pilz. You have to say it'd be a surprise if she didn't make the final. The way she's been going, particularly the last couple of seasons, the way she went in Vila, climbing very, very strongly. Super calm, crosses through with the right hand. This is where we saw Mina Markovic just struggle to get her feet back on. That right foot was just in an awkward position, but Jessie, no problem. She's up with the right hand. Now we're going to see her onto the big blue slopers that are about to come into shot. This is where we lost Meiko Taki. She went for the left one. Jessie secures the left one. This is going to be a new high point for Jessie Pilz, or at least the lead. If for nothing else, for count back to the qualifiers. No, it's a new high point. She'll take the clean lead, if you like, Are we about to see the first top of the route? Now the route setters will be getting interested. She's creeping that left hand up. It's such an awkward mantle off that left hand volume. Tries to go off the right one. It means she's a bit further away, but the mantle becomes that bit easier. The crowd in Chamonix beginning to respond now. They know this is an exceptional effort from Jessie Pilz, but is she going to cross through? Is she going to bump the left hand up? What will the method be? She crossed through, but she didn't quite believe it was possible. It matters not though. Jessie Pilz will climb in the final here in Chamonix this evening. That is a new high point. I think the route says to be pleased with that. I think suddenly the route looks possible.
No, for sure. And when we were talking to him this morning, there was a bit of a wry smile on his face when he was talking about that mantle. I think it's a bit mean to stick a mantle in at the end of a route, personally, but it's there. And you could see she got to that crimp, and it was almost this moment of disbelief that that hole was as bad as it was, having done all that climbing down below. You can see she just didn't quite have enough to pull on to do that cross-route move. Yeah,
clever setting as well, though, from the route setters, because she originally tried to mantle onto the left-hand volume as we look at it, which is closer to where she wanted to go, and then realised, cleverly, that if you go to the right-hand volume, which is actually, it goes against your instinct, counterintuitive is the word I'm looking for, is a bit further away from where you want to go, but it's an easier position to launch from.
During all that drama, I think we lost Sean Bailey fairly low down.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just keep an eye on Jessie Pilz setting a new high point. Let's see if Sean Bailey's scores come through. It has. He's in 8th place, so that means that he'll be into the final if none of the remaining 5 climbers can match or beat his high point. You would have to say that's highly unlikely. Kyo Noguchi, bottom right of your screen. We're watching Yuki Hada on the men's route. Now then, are we about to see, on a route that stops some of the best lead climbers in the world, are we about to see a spate of tops? Yuki Hada, the 5th to last climber to go, so that means the top 3 climbers now guaranteed their place in the final. Stefano Ghisolfi, Sasha Lehmann and Will Bosey.
Yuki Hada having a little bit of a moment down here. He tried a few things, went up with the left, then went back down. Now he's gone to that undercling.
It's such a fiddly section. Most of the climbers have dealt with it pretty well. I was certainly nervous that they might not figure it out, but I fear I underestimated most of them. But it is a fiddly section.
I think in the same way as you were saying, it's difficult if it's too easy. If you're pulling on and within minutes, within seconds of the route, you're in trouble. Also quite difficult to deal with and go, I've got another 12, 13 meters of climbing above me.
Everyone knows that feeling as well. You do a couple of hard moves and you look up and you think, not done yet.
Yeah, again, every route I do.
Just want that feeling to come as late as possible on the route. Sadly for Yuki Hada, I think it probably came quite low down. You can see he's having to slap now. Perhaps burned quite a bit of energy. Kyo Noguchi's on the bottom right of your screen.
We were talking earlier about the bouldering battle between her and Miho. It'll be interesting to see how their lead battle goes as well. And perhaps creating more tension than there is here, but I want there to be a battle.
Oh, I think there's a battle. After Akio, it'll be the triumvirate of climbers who've dominated the past couple of seasons. Annette Verhoeven, Jane Kim and Janja Garnbret. They've been the top 3 in the past 2 seasons in the overall standings. Janja winning both, Anak second once and third once, and Jane second once and third once as well. So they're still to come after Akio. Anak just had a really bad luck start to the season in Vila with the slip that I mentioned earlier on the semi-final route. Ended up 27th out of 27 in the Vila semi-final. Be a big surprise if she missed another final. Kyo, meanwhile, I'm keeping an eye on bottom right, looking immensely calm. One of those climbers we're always a bit surprised she falls off, because you can't quite believe she was tired. So smooth, and then suddenly you think, oh wow, she's human, she gets tired.
There's not a lot on her face to give it away either. It's not that she's grimacing or like...
Not the most expressive when she's on the wall.
I was about to say gurning. Is that... Can't imagine her gurning either.
She'll have a good poker face, I know that. So Yuki Hada finds a sweet spot of that volume. Well, just to the right of it, but good enough. I think that Kyo Noguchi is almost certainly climbing herself into the final here. Now, it's only bottom right of the screen. That is the move. I think when we lost Hannah Schubert going up with the left hand, which will mean she's tied on score for Hannah and goes through to the final on countback.
Again, I mean, you called it. I was surprised when she went because she didn't look like she was struggling, and then suddenly she was going backwards from the wall. So right heel up on that slopey red hold. Takes the fall.
You lose Yuki. Now then, get ready for the cheer. The man they've all been waiting for is coming out next, Romain Desgranges.
He really is such a home favourite. His movie's been playing on the big screen. His comic book is on sale at the back of the arena. It's just, it's got to be such an advantage to know most people in that audience are gunning for you. Gunning for you, is that the right word?
That
supporting
right
you, supporting you.
Gunning,
Anyway.
we'll go for gunning for.
It's very hot out here.
Yeah, Romain is without doubt the crowd favourite. Local Chamonix, trains here, lives here, and has done most of his adult life. Very, very popular in the figure, in the valley, excuse me. So here's Annette Verhoeven. So calm, so experienced, and so successful. You wouldn't imagine what happened in Villars will play on her mind too much. I think that'll be quickly forgotten.
Do you think that's going to stress her out, or is it going to make her more determined coming into this semi-final not to make a similar mistake, or will it play on her mind a bit?
I don't get the impression it will. She's actually just not quite clipped that draw right. There she goes, she corrects it. I don't think she'll dwell on it too much. It's one of those things, she had a heel hook, it popped. She watched the replay, still not quite sure what happened. It's just one of those things. First final she'd missed for 5 years. I don't think it'll affect her too much. She's a very calm climber. Romain Desgranges just getting ready to climb bottom right of the screen. Yeah, as you say, appears in his own comic book. Superman wears Romain Desgranges pyjamas. And he almost slipped right at the bottom of the route where Yoshi Ogata slipped. Almost, foot peeled off.
We talked about it when he fell off, but that hold is split down the middle with grippy black texture and then slippery grey texture. And it's very easy just to stand on the corner of it and take that foot pop, especially when you're not really concentrating there. You're not expected to fall off the first move, and therefore you don't think about it, and that's it.
So top 5 women guaranteed their place in the final. So Kiya Noguchi does go through. It's Jessie Peltz, Meiko Takio, Kiya Noguchi, Hannah Schubert and Ashima Shirashi through. 2 Austrians, 2 Japanese and an American climber. Anak looking to join them. The rest of the top 8 as it stands, Chiasa Kalan, Manon Ili and Vita Lucan. Not much they can do now but watch. Anak completely untroubled at this stage. Now she gets a chance for a good rest. Chooses to clip. Always thinking, not just mindlessly resting and then wondering what's next. The cogs are still turning in her brain. She's still thinking, and she's going, I think, for the double rest. Very brief second rest. From what we've seen, I would say it seems about the optimum rest time. A little shake out and a chalk on each hand, on each hold, each of the 2 rests, then get motoring again.
Yeah, she didn't take a huge amount of time. I think Roman's taken a fall.
Seen Romain fall again. I was watching, can't watch both climbers at once. I had my eye on Anak, glanced down at the notes, and Romain was down. That is not going to go down well with the local crowd. He won't have done enough to secure himself a place in the final. We'll have a look at a replay of Romain after this from Anak Verhoeven.
And she's looked very serene, very calm. A hint of urgency starting to come in now. That heel hook method.
It is quite extraordinary when you see these moves that are stopping some of the world's best climbers, and then we get the Anak Verhoevens of this world coming out and just cruising through them.
She's working out the clip here. This is where it's confused a few people.
Able to rest from a hold that spat some climbers off, although I guess the key difference is she has still got her feet on.
So will she choose to go through without clipping? She does.
I think she'll get another couple of moves and then kind of reach back from that right hand vertical crimp. No, she won't. One word from me.
Look again, that strong drop knee position really works when it's locked in.
Yeah, so if she can slap for this next hold, even if she doesn't latch it, she will actually do enough to make the final. So that's the final for Anak. But countback so often critical, and so often critical in women's league climbing, it would seem that a top would be very, very nice. So again, can't get much closer to the action than that. Just slaps up with the left hand. She'll have done enough. That'll be her through in second place as it stands. So worst she could end up is fourth. Anyway, comfortably into the final in the middle of the pack at worst. So let's see if we can see Romain Desgrange's replay at some stage. Luca Potokar out now. Here comes Romain. So where was he? So he was on the kind of second rest, where we've seen a lot of climbers resting. It looked an awkward fall. Does that left heel pop as he's pulling the rope through? I'm on the edge of my seat wondering what's going to happen here. Well, luckily he got the clip done, because it would have been a very awkward fall. Nothing amiss at this stage. And he just didn't quite decide what to do with his feet. He thought he was working the route. He grabbed the quick draw. Oh, Romain, he just bit of indecision, swung out left, didn't like the sound of it.
He seemed to go
back
way above the hole with that left foot. He totally missed it. He had the reach, he had the distance, but just seemed to just mistime the aim of it.
Oh, that's such a shame for Romain Desgrange. He won the European Championships on this wall in this square in 2015. But he's never won a World Cup in his hometown, and he's not going to this time. That's such a heartbreak for him and for the Chamonix crowd, but it does open up a potential spot in the final. I mean, Romain would have been a very strong favourite to make it. Suddenly, he's not there. Who's going to take what would likely have been Romain's place? That's the move. Really strange from Romain. He just seemed to swing across, and halfway across it was almost as if he just didn't like the sound of it at all. Backed out of it. Jane Kim's now climbing. Bottom right of your screen. She's the second last woman to climb. There's only Janja Garnbret to come as we lose Luca as well. So the guys that are currently sitting 6th, 7th, 8th, they'll be watching this and thinking, maybe I've done enough. Maybe. 2 more climbers to come in the men.
I'm hugely surprised. I really thought when we got into this sort of bottom section of the men's semi-final that we would see more people get into that 360 move, at least moving through that 360 move. Hasn't proved to be the case. Will Bosey, just looking, is still in 3rd position. He's going to be chuffed about that. Jane Kim, so serene when she climbs.
So Romain Desgrange, just by the way, 24th place. Going to end up in 27th. That's a disaster for him in his home World Cup, in the overall rankings as well. Oh, Romain Desgrange, day to forget for him. Now, Jane Kim, she doesn't make many mistakes.
You know when you see a climber and you want to emulate what they do, her calmness is something I would love to have whenever I'm on the wall. Instead of sort of shaking and breathing hard, but she just looks in this bubble of calm all the time.
Matt, sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind. I've climbed with you. I've belayed Jane Kim outdoor climbing. I have to say, there's I don't want to use the word gulf in styles, but
you're saying Jane Kim is a better climber than me?
I would say there's a sizable gap in smoothness and technique.
I didn't see that coming. God, ego's gone now. I just thought we were comparable.
Actually, it was a gulf. Sorry.
Jane Kim's chalk bag appears to be massive.
You climbed 8A, Matt. You don't give yourself too hard a time, but I think you've got to be realistic in your goals. Jane Kim might be maybe just at next level.
Yeah, something to aspire to perhaps one day. Yeah, Jane Kim's chalk bag, is it just me or is that huge?
It is fairly sizable. Alex Megos, 27th climber out. Still Jakob Schubert to come.
Alex Megos, very, very popular on the circuit, and you can see why. He's a person, I mean, we saw when you interviewed him yesterday, and you accused him of not training hard enough. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I know he's fit, but he clearly not occupied too much of his time worrying about World Cup season.
No, he doesn't want to, does he? He wants to get out on the real rock.
I don't know if you saw it. It was a brilliant quote from him yesterday. I saw it on social media from Bjorn Pohl, and he said to Alex, with the routes hard, and he went, well, you know when you run 10k, it's hard, but you know you can do it. Oh, brilliant. He made a mistake in the VLAR semis, though. It was a bit messy with a clip. Didn't quite get his calculations right on where to clip from, so he needs to convert what was an excellent qualifying day into a place in the finals.
I mean, it's interesting, just that change of style. He is undoubtedly one of the best rock climbers in the world, but it doesn't necessarily just straight away compute into a competition scene. Very nice lady's just handed me a hat so I can take the t-shirt off my head.
Both getting hats. It's Christmas on the live stream. Merci. I quite liked your turban actually, Matt, but been replaced by a hat. So Jane Kim now on the key section, crossing out to the right. Needs this next left hold to make the final. Doesn't really look as if she's struggling too much. So that's her into the final. And one move past where she needed to get to, she comes off. Mei Kotaki, that's looking an increasingly extraordinary performance from her to get onto those slopers. Only had one climber past them so far. Just Janja Garnbret to come. How many times have we seen Janja Garnbret come out and top the semi-final route and then put herself into such a controlled position for the final when all she knows, all she needs to do is match her competitors. Okay. Brilliant angle on Alex Megos. Slaps up with the left hand. This will be enough for the final for him, without a doubt. Now then, can we see someone top this men's route? We saw Stefano Ghisolfi set a very impressive high point, but we haven't seen a top on either route. Again, the third climber to get hit and the third climber to have the rope caught like that. I think it'll just free itself. It did for Stefano. Alex Megos, you couldn't make him up, could you?
I watched him win Quiff a couple of years ago, drinking tea throughout the whole final. I think the more relaxed he is, the better he climbs. Taking a moment now, looking at the next hole, next section. It's quite a good rest that if you find it, just pressing into that corner.
So Alex, we know he'll be in the final. What stage will he come out? Could he go into it with a top in the semi-final? Because if he can and it comes to count back, it could be absolutely crucial. Awkward clip, had to reach a bit further than he would have liked and just fiddled with it a bit. So we saw Stefano Ghisolfi higher than this. We're not yet at the high point. Alex's left foot looked like it just cut off slightly unexpectedly there. Now we're onto the head wall. Now the crowd getting behind Alex Megos. This is what we want to see from him. He's one of climbing superstars, and we're going to see him again here in Chamonix. He knows he's done enough. He'll be into the final. He is, as I say, a superstar of climbing, and the crowd will get to see him at sunset in the Place du Mont Blanc. Where else in the world would you want to be? If we don't see Janja Garnbret there, it will be the first final she's missed in her lead climbing career at the IFSC.
That's an incredible statistic. I didn't know that.
To never have a foot pop, to never have a bad day, to never wake up on the wrong side of the bed and not just find your rhythm. We were saying, both as people that watch and talk about climbing for a living, it's finding superlatives, finding the adjectives to describe this woman. It's more and more difficult. You've used your superlatives and you think, oh, well,
Yeah, I've used
what now?
dominant more than once with her. She just cruises everything, doesn't she?
She's still going to top this route though. It's I know I'm guilty when Janja walks out. I think it's almost a foregone conclusion, to be honest, in her lead climbing career. It has been so far, but the day will come where she slips off early on. She makes mistakes, she has a bad day, she picks up an injury, something will happen. So whilst everybody in the venue is expecting Janja Garnbret to make the final at least, topping the route might be a challenge from what we've seen, but at least make the final. Nothing is guaranteed. These moves are not easy and they're not certain.
Will we see her rest for a long time here? Anak moved very quickly through this and didn't need the rest. Interesting to see what Janja does. She needs to rest quite low down, no heel yet.
So Jakob Schubert just pulling onto the wall. Top 8 as it stands. Alex Megos, Stefano Gasoffi, Sasha Lehmann, Will Bosi, Domin Skofic, Taisei Hummer, Shooter Tanaka. Those 7 guaranteed their place in the final. Jakub Konechny, who's the first climber out, is currently sitting in 8th place. However, with Jakob Schubert fresh from a win in Vila on the wall, you fear somewhat for Jakub Konechny, because Jakob Schubert could take his place in the final. But those top 7, down to Shooter Tanaka, will be in the final. Ditto in the women's competition.
Jakob Schubert looking very strong this season. He seems to have been on the weights over the off-season. He's huge.
Yeah, I'm racking my brains for that time I saw him and he didn't look strong. He just seems to be immensely strong, good at everything at all times. No slouch on the speed wall either. Just keep an eye on Janja Garnbret very quickly. Top 7 women: Jessie Pilz, Annette Verhoeven, Meiko Taki, Jane Kim, Akuna Gucci, Hannah Schubert, Ashima Shirasi, Jasa Kalan currently sitting in 8th place. Janja Garnbret could displace her. Tell you what, they're 2 good finals lines up, regardless of who the 8th name inserted is. In both finals, they're going to be good finals. Good combination of young, exciting up-and-comers with nothing to lose, and veterans who've been there and done it and want to keep doing it.
Janja into most people's crux section here, but she looks in control. That drop knee coming in, not as much as other people actually. Perhaps she's relying on the strength a little bit more than that drop knee needs. No, a slap up to that crimp. Easy control style. Cutting loose a little bit there on that right hand hold.
Yeah, that's Janja into the final. She hasn't topped the route yet, of course, but she's done enough to get there. And seemed to almost bail out of that one. Bit of a strange one from Janja. She'll be in the final low, and usually from her, she won't be going in first place. She won't climb last. It's a very unfamiliar situation for her.
Maybe she's found it too stressful. Maybe
I think she knew she'd done enough. Be interesting to. We'll try and get a replay for you of Janja Garnbret. Yeah, certainly a bit of a strange one. It did seem as if she just let go, but I'm sure when we watch it in slow motion, there'll be a better explanation.
So here's Jakob Schubert.
He's gunning for a place in the final at the expense of Jakub Konechny. Yeah, we will bring you a replay of Janja afterwards. Jakob just setting himself before the clear crux of the men's route. If he can make his way past those volcanoes and onto the 2 black slopers, then he'll have found himself in the final.
As Roman showed, none of this route is a given. You can pop off at almost any moment, and we've seen it.
Jakob still not quite committing into that top section.
So here comes the tricky bit. Right toe up into that 2-3 finger pocket. Left heel hook out. Takes a moment before clipping.
See the photographer down there getting pretty close to the action. One of the best things about Climbing World Cups, the access you get to the athletes is incredible. And But even so, even the photographers can't get as close as that. We were on the wall with him for a second there, so he crosses through with the left hand. Really nice work, look calm and smooth. If you can latch these volumes, you can latch the left one. I think he's about to latch the right one. He'll be into the final. So Jakob Schubert does make it. He has the opportunity to make it 2 wins in a row. We're going to see another incredible dominant season from him like we saw in 2011. It was 7 years ago. He's still just as strong.
It was interesting watching him through that bit. I've filmed with him on a campus ball before, and he's so strong with his feet not on the wall. You could see that through that section.
Yeah, most people would be letting out a power scream. Almost chalked up halfway through. So Jakob into the final. Going in first place would be pretty handy though, but he'll need to top if he's going to do that. Or cut it pretty close to topping at least. No tops on the women's routes. We'll bring you a replay of Janja Garnbret in slow motion as she fell. It looked to me as if she just dropped off, but something must have given. We'll find out shortly. So Jakob currently wrestling with the volume that Sasha Lehmann had his heel hook in that popped earlier on. Jane Kim and Janja Garnbret a couple of meters away from us, just comparing notes on the route. But for now, it's all about Jakob Schubert. He's the only climber on the wall here in the Place Mont Blanc. Done more than enough to get to the final. For the sake of countback, for the sake of just topping a route in front of this massive Chamonix crowd, he wants to keep on going. And there are the top holds. He was pretty dominant last week in Arco. Arco Villars. He was dominant last week in Villars. Can he dominate the semi-final here in Chamonix? It's going to be a high point. I think he knew that wasn't happening. Either way, Jakob Schubert safely into the final. What a lineup we've got in the 2 finals for you. We'll have a look at a replay of Janja.
So here she is now, left hand on that right sloper, bumps up the left hand, takes a moment. She's looking fairly calm right now. And then, yeah, it just seems to, I think it was almost like she knew that the next move wasn't going to happen and that she couldn't slap for it. She couldn't really make a decent attempt for it.
So there we have it. Before we leave you, we'll bring you a confirmed result list, or a provisional result list with the latest one we have. Appeal's always possible, of course, but didn't see anything that would warrant an appeal. We'll have results for you in just a second.
A few surprises there with Roman dropping off early, Will Bosi making the final.
And here we see it, Jessie Peltz goes through in first place. Janja Garnbret, she's not used to second place even in a semi-final. Anna Verhoeven, Mei Kotaki, Jane Kim, Aki Noguchi, Hannah Schubert and Ashima Shirashi. What a mouth-watering final that would be. Chaza Kallan, feel slightly sorry for her, set an early high point in the very last climb, knocked her off. You can see ties there on that 40 plus area separated by countback to the qualifying round. Vita Lukan and Mina Markovic, 11th and 12th for Slovenia. A bit lower down the order, Claire Burfind. A lot of people looking forward to seeing her. Today wasn't her day, but she's a young climber, plenty of opportunities still to come. And in 15th place, Salome Roman, who in a week's time will climb in her hometown of Briança. Miho Nanaka, finalist last time, she's 14th. And a bit lower down the order, Mia Krampel, Julia Fisa, Nowen Ark, Katerina Kiprinova, Julia Pantelieva and Michelle Hulliger. And in the men's semi-final, there's the result. Jakob Schubert, 5 moves more than anyone else could manage. He goes through in first place. Alexander Megos, Stefano Gisolfi, Sasha Lehmann, Will Bosi, Domen Skofic, Tasai Homer and Shooter Tanaka. Fascinating final, some big guns, some major players. Alex Megos, relatively new to competitions, legendary outdoor climber, young up and coming Japanese climbers, there's all sorts in there. 9th, Jakub Konechny, again climbed very early, had to wait and displaced by the last climber. You have to feel slightly sorry for him. A few names who one might have expected to see slightly higher up, but the competition is that fierce that Tomoe Narasaki, Marcello Bombardi, Basti Halenka, Keita Dohi, Kokora Fuji not making it into the top half. And there are 2 more climbers below that. Apologies, our graphics only go as far as 26, but Hamwell Kim, Yuval Shemler, Javier Cano Blazquez, Luta Potokar, Sam Avazu, Hida Masa Nishida. Well, Matt, fantastic semi-final, but what a lineup for the finals tonight.
It's going to be incredible, and it was wonderful watching that. We knew we'd get drama early on in that men's route. Boy, did we see it. Some big names falling off very low down on that route. And then the women's, that amazing crescent shape coming into that crux section. I almost ran out of things to say on that bit where they kept falling off, because it seemed to happen a lot. So just so cool to see a few of them breaking through the head wall.
We did get a separation. We got 8 men, we got 8 women, and we will have the finals for you this evening starting at 8:30 p.m. See you then.
On est un peu déçus parce que Manon